Chapter 223. Ghost Lee's body shook greatly. Instantly ecstasy surged up his face, sweeping away the heaviness that had frozen on his face for a long time. Barely suppressing his excitement, Ghostly still could not control the slight tremble in his voice. Please, Senior, teach me." The nine-tailed celestial fox stared at him. After a moment, suddenly smiled and said, "That girl must be the person you deeply love?" Ghostly did not speak, but the longing and anxious expression on his face intensified. The nine-tailed celestial fox shook her head and sighed, but her eyes were filled with tenderness and pity. Softly said, "As you said, that girl's physical body is intact. So naturally, it is because of that strange power that forced her soul to disperse. Originally, once the 3 souls and 7 spirits are dispersed, even the deities cannot save her, but as long as there is still one soul, there is hope. Although the soul is divided into 3 souls and 7 spirits, but they are all where the human soul resides, between the same person's soul, there is a mysterious attraction between each other. The cultivators of the Middle Earth rarely dabble in this, but many years ago, I once saw with my own eyes a strange person perform the soul return strange technique, completely retrieving the soul of a man who unfortunately had 1 soul and 3 spirits taken away by an evil demon. From this, although the situation is slightly different, but as long as your friend's physical body is not destroyed and there are remnants of her soul, she will definitely be saved." Ghostly was initially excited, but when he heard the words soul return strange skill, he suddenly thought of something, frowned, and said, "Senior, the soul return strange skill that you're talking about, don't tell me it is the Black Shaman tribe in the 10,000 Great Mountains?" The nine-tailed celestial fox raised her eyebrows, slightly surprised, nodded and said, "Why, so you also know about this Black Shaman tribe?" This Black Shaman tribe is mysterious and unfathomable. The Black Shaman sorcerer who worships the deities is especially proficient in this kind of ghost soul special skill. As long as you have a way to find the Black Shaman sorcerer, most likely your friend will be saved. Ghostly was silent. After a long while, unable to conceal the disappointment on his face, he quietly said, "To tell you the truth, this Black Shaman tribe may save my friend. I've already heard about it 10 years ago. But in these 10 years, I have been to this southern border countless times and even went deep into those 10,000 Great Mountains for a long time. But no matter how carefully I inquired, I could not find any news about the Black Shaman tribe. Everyone told me, as early as 1,000 years ago, that Black Shaman tribe was already extinct. 1,000 years ago." The nine-tailed celestial fox was frowning as she listened, but suddenly raised her voice and interrupted Ghostly. "That's right. What's wrong?" Ghostly raised his head and looked at her. The gentle and charming woman frowned slightly, as if she was thinking about something. Her soft and slender hair draped over her shoulders. As the night wind blew, a few strands danced around her face. After a while, she raised her head and said, "I've been locked up for too long. My brain isn't working well anymore. I need to think to remember. When I met that Black Shaman tribe member, it was 200 years before I was locked up by those fellows from Funxiang Valley, which is to say at least 500 years ago, the Black Shaman tribe still existed." Ghostly stared intently at her. His expression changed drastically. The nine-tailed celestial fox saw his expression, suddenly smiled and said, Forget it. On the account that you are my benefactor, I will help you with this. Tomorrow I will bring you to southern border to search. See the place where you met that fellow, if there are any traces of the Black Shaman tribe." Ghostly breathed deeply, was silent for a moment, slightly bowed his head to her, and said, "Many thanks, Senior. My gratitude is endless. As long as you can save my friend, in the future, no matter what Senior needs, just instruct me." The nine-tailed celestial fox looked at the man in front of her. His face was filled with unswerving determination. His eyes indistinctly had a faint warmth. Not sure if he was thinking of someone. Once she thought of that, for some reason, her heart suddenly felt a sense of gentleness. The men in this world, even though there were those who were unfaithful, but there were still those who were infatuated with love. The night was deep. It was quiet everywhere. Only in an unknown place in the depths of the forest, the cries of the insects in the wild could be heard, low and faint, as if pouring out. The wild wind blew past, the treetops in the forest swayed lightly, making rustling sounds. The nine-tailed celestial fox gently placed Xiao Hui on the ground and stood in the forest, staring blankly. After a long time, she closed her eyes, turned her head slightly, as if listening to something, and also as if using her body and soul to feel the taste of freedom in this world. The footsteps behind her suddenly sounded and stopped. Ghost Lee's voice was heard. "It's late. Why is Senior not going to sleep?" The nine-tailed celestial fox did not open her eyes, did not even turn her head, only slowly said, "What about you? Why are you not sleeping?" Ghostly was silent for a while, said, "I can't sleep." The nine-tailed celestial fox turned around, looked at him, smiled, and said, "Feeling a little nervous?" Ghostly did not speak. This thought, which had once been close to despair, suddenly burst forth with new hope, making him unable to sleep from the excitement. The nine-tailed celestial fox smiled sweetly, overflowing with seductiveness. Even the night around her seemed to become gentle. She was heard faintly saying, "There is one thing I want to tell you." Ghostly quickly said, "Senior, please speak." The nine-tailed celestial fox glared at him and said, "That's right. Can you stop calling me Senior? You're fine with other things, but don't you know that calling a woman Senior or Senior will make her sound old? Is that very rude?" Ghostly was speechless. So no matter if it was 18 years old, 28 years old, or 2,800 years old, as long as it was a woman, they would definitely be afraid of getting old. Then, "What should I call you?" Ghostly carefully asked. That woman heard it, was surprised, and then a trace of helplessness appeared on her face. After a long while, she indifferently said, "Yes. What should I call?" "The original name I have long forgotten. How about this? Anyway, you have seen my real white fox body. You can call me Xiao Bai." "Xiao Bai," Ghostly awkwardly called out. His expression was very strange. The nine-tailed celestial fox did not seem to mind. Instead, her eyes turned and saw the monkey Xiao Hui squatting on the ground looking around, and then thought of something, asked Ghostly, "Oh, right. What is this monkey called? You won't call him Three-Eyed Monkey, right?" Ghostly said, "I adopted this monkey when I was young. I call it Xiao Hui." The nine-tailed celestial fox, who was now called Xiao Bai, was startled and then laughed, stretched out her hand, and bent down to carry Xiao Hui up. Appraising it, her eyes filled with smiles, said, We are indeed fated. You are called Xiao Hui. I'm called Xiao Bai. Oh." Xiao Hui grinned in her arms, laughed, used its monkey paw to put on her shoulder, very affectionate. Ghostly stood at the side, watching the situation, for a moment speechless. After a moment, secretly shook his head and quietly walked away. The next day, the sky gradually brightened, but the southern border sun was still not seen. The sky was gloomy, filled with dark clouds. It was a cloudy day. But the light was still bright and did not feel stuffy. Occasionally a breeze blew past, caressing the body. It was not as hot as last night, making one feel invigorated. The cold feeling circulated in his body. The inferno mirror on his chest also indistinctly emitted a gentle warmth. Two different energies existed in his body at the same time. Right now, seemed to be very quiet, not interfering with each other. Ghostly slowly opened his eyes, without anyone noticing, secretly smiled bitterly. In fact, no one was clearer than him about his own body condition. Last night, Xiao Bai, who was also the nine-tailed celestial fox's word about his body, in that battle with Qi Yin Beast, his body's sudden collapse was proven. Even he himself did not know. How long could his body last? He lowered his head, looked at that black fire stick quietly lying in his hand. For so many years, it had always been quietly accompanying him. He suddenly smiled, held the fire stick tightly, like connected by blood. As long as he could save Bai Yao, what else was it? Suddenly, a gust of wind was heard above this small mountain. From far and near, a figure actually flew down. Ghostly frowned, stood up, looked up, his eyes filled with coldness. The next moment, that figure landed. Light flashed and gradually dispersed, revealing a yellow figure. Jean Pinger. Ghost Lee's gaze froze. His heart was unexpectedly shaken. He could be said to be concealed on this small mountain, but this Jean Pinger could actually find him here. It was really amazing. Could it be that she was secretly following him and he did not even sense it at all? Jean Pinger still had her familiar smile, glanced sideways at Ghostly, as if she had long known that he was here, without the slightest surprise, smiled and said, "Gongzi, you have indeed found a good place to hide." Chapter 224. Ghostly snorted, suddenly said, "Miss Jean, you are the good one. Very powerful." Jean Pinger seemed to not understand the sarcasm in Ghostly's words, smiled, and said, "How can I be compared to Gongzi? Last night Gongzi only tried your best and already turned the entire Funxiang Valley upside down. The heaven and earth changed color. I am very impressed." Thousands of thoughts turned in Ghostly's mind, but in the end he could not figure out how this He Huan sect lady found him. He did not show it on his face, indifferently said, "Last night the volcano erupted. It was a natural thing, nothing to do with me. I wonder if Miss heard any news last night?" Jean Pinger's eyes wandered, was about to speak when suddenly she frowned slightly. Behind Ghostly, a sound, first that gray-furred monkey that had been following Ghostly ran out, and then a lady leisurely walked out from the forest, her skin like snow, her features like a painting, 1,000 kinds of amorous feelings, 1,000 gentleness, all in her graceful figure. She was actually a peerless beauty. And most importantly, Jean Pinger with one look could tell that the lady was only wearing an outer garment, and between her steps, indistinctly revealed her fair skin, adding to her allure. That clothing was obviously a man's clothing. Last night, she still saw Ghostly wearing it, and now, Ghostly did not have any outer garment. Jean Pinger's eyes glimmered, suddenly smiled, and said, "This sister is so beautiful. How come I have not seen you these few days?" Speaking, she looked at Ghostly with a smile, yet not a smile, said, "In the past I heard Gongzi and Miss Biao were infatuated with each other. Miss Biao for Gongzi did not hesitate to scatter her soul, sacrificed herself to block the Zhu Xian's strange sword. Gongzi for Miss Biao betrayed Qing Yun, entered the holy sect, assisted Ghost King sect leader to conquer everywhere, killed countless people. In the past 10 years, did not hesitate to take the risk to go deep into the southern barbarian 10,000 great mountains to search for a way to cure Miss Biao. With all these, how can the women in the world not be moved and admire you?" Her voice became more and more gentle. Her expression also became gentler, but the words in her mouth changed. "Just that time is heartless. The years are bright. The past is over. Gongzi has found a good partner again. This is to congratulate Gongzi. One day let me personally go to Majestic Fox Mountain to congratulate Ghost King sect leader." Ghost Lee's face was cold, hearing the latter part. His expression turned even colder, but he only snorted coldly and did not say anything. Instead, the nine-tailed celestial fox Xiao Bai looked at Ghostly and then looked at Jean Pinger standing opposite, suddenly laughed and said, "This lady you have misunderstood. Actually, last night, I met a strong person and was almost kidnapped and humiliated by them. Luckily, this ghostly Gongzi passed by and lent a helping hand. Then luckily, I managed to escape. As for the clothes that I'm wearing, it's something that young master temporarily lent to me to cover my embarrassment." Jean Pinger turned to look at Xiao Bai. With her experience, how could she believe such nonsense? And looking at Xiao Bai's smiling face, it didn't look like he had just been threatened last night. From Jean Pinger's point of view, if there was a blind bandit who met this woman in front of her, most likely, Jean Pinger shook her head slightly and could not be bothered to think more about it. Just that Xiao Bai's beauty was not inferior to her own. She could not help but take a few more glances and then turn to Ghostly and said, "Last night in Funxiang Valley, did Gongzi discover anything?" Ghostly indifferently said, "Nothing." After entering last night, not long after, the volcano suddenly erupted and I retreated. His voice paused, spoke to Jean Pinger. "Last night you sneaked into the valley entrance where the commotion was. Did anything happen, the relationship between the human fish tribe and Funxiang Valley? Did you discover anything?" Jean Pinger smiled, her expression calm, shook her head and sighed. "It's really unfortunate. I also did not discover anything. Last night, the commotion at Funxiang Valley entrance. It was a few of their disciples quarreling. As for those human fish tribe, I really have no clue. Ghostly frowned, for a moment became silent. Jean Pinger was silent for a moment, turned and glanced at Xiao Bai, then revealed a smile and said to Ghostly, "Since young master has a beauty to accompany you, I think I should not be an eyesore here. Let's part here. Maybe not long after young master and I are fated, we will meet again in this southern border place." After speaking, she smiled at Xiao Bai, waved her sleeve, a light flashed, turned into a yellow figure, flew up to the sky. Ghostly looked at that figure becoming smaller and smaller in the horizon, frowning tightly. Xiao Bai walked to his side. Xiao Hui jumped up in 2 or 3 jumps, although it had only been a night, but Xiao Hui seemed to be very familiar with Xiao Bai, this girl. Xiao Bai gently carried Xiao Hui in her arms. After a moment, spoke to Ghostly. "You once told her that we will be here?" Ghostly silently shook his head. After a long while said, "This is what I cannot understand. How can this girl be so powerful, to know our whereabouts? But when I checked my entire body just now, I could not find any traces of someone playing tricks on me." Xiao Bai's eyes looked around, assessed Ghostly, and then, for some reason, shifted back to Xiao Hui, suddenly smiled and said, "With your cultivation, even if that girl wanted to leave any mark on your body, I'm afraid it would be difficult for her to do so. The problem is not with you." Ghostly looked over, hesitated for a moment, said, "Why?" Listening to Senior. "Miss Xiao Bai, you seem to know something?" Xiao Bai's eyes looked around, used her hand to gently caress Xiao Hui's head, smiled and said, "Xiao Hui most likely has never bathed before, so the problem is with Xiao Hui." At the foot of the small mountain, Ghostly and Xiao Bai found a clear stream and wanted to help Xiao Hui bathe. Xiao Hui, ever since it was born, had never had the experience of bathing. Naturally, it was extremely unwilling, struggled with all its might, calling out noisily. In the end, Xiao Bai had a solution, plucked a few wild fruit from somewhere and threw them into Xiao Hui's hands. At the same time, comforted it and did it herself, then placed Xiao Hui in the water and used the water to wash its body. Ghostly frowned tightly. After a long silence, said, "Strange, why did I not sense this smell?" Xiao Bai heard it, laughed softly, and said, "You are a man and did not pay attention. Naturally, you will not sense it. It was also because I adored Xiao Hui last night, when I carried it in my bosom. From then on I smelt a faint fragrance. At that time, I felt it was strange. A monkey like Xiao Hui should not have this kind of smell, but the smell was extremely faint, and I did not notice it. Just that this morning I met that young lady and then realized it." She smiled and said, "That young lady's thoughts are meticulous, good tricks, very powerful." Ghostly coldly snorted. The sky was still very hazy. The stream water gurgled. Xiao Hui occasionally frolicked in the stream, as if unwilling to stop even for a moment, occasionally splashing water around. Xiao Bai, who was squatting at the side, washing its body, had quite a lot of water splashes from this naughty monkey. Ghostly stood at the side and looked over. On the stream, Xiao Bai rolled up her sleeves, a faint smile on her face, her eyes like water, her mouth smiling, coaxing Xiao Hui to be more well-behaved, helping it to scrub its body. Looking carefully, a few drops of water fell on her face, like crystal-clear pearls, or gently hung on the tip of her eyebrows, or quietly slid down along with her face, passing over her almost transparent white skin, but still fell reluctantly, as if they were longing for her. The breeze of the southern border wilderness blew gently from afar, ruffling her long hair. The crystal-clear water droplets also seemed to be gently trembling. Ghostly suddenly turned his head and did not look over there anymore. Just that after a moment, Xiao Bai's cry was heard from behind. Ghostly was shocked, turned back, and saw Xiao Hui had already finished washing its body and jumped ashore. Before Xiao Bai could stop it, its entire body shook. Immediately the water droplets in its fur splashed out in all directions. Xiao Bai could not dodge in time, scolded with a smile, but its body had already been splashed with water droplets from this drizzle. Turning its eyes, Xiao Bai saw Ghostly looking over, was stunned for a moment, and then smiled. Ghostly's lips twitched, subconsciously also smiled, and then turned his head. Xiao Bai was still laughing and scolding Xiao Hui behind him. In this hazy weather, suddenly there was a warmth that had not been felt for a long time, quietly reverberated. Chapter 225. Not sure if in this season, the southern border sky would always be this hazy. After coming out from that small hill, under Xiao Bai's guidance, 2 people and 1 monkey headed towards Funxiang Valley west. That night, the volcano in Funxiang Valley Inferno altar erupted. Heaven and earth changed. The power was extremely great. Within 100 miles radius it was felt. Several days later, in the southern border's gloomy sky, the huge hole formed by the scorching hot lava, although had disappeared, but there was still a huge patch of cloud, showing a reddish-yellow color, hanging high in Funxiang Valley's direction. It was very strange. This kind of heaven and earth change was already eye-catching. Now that it happened in the always low-key and mysterious Funxiang Valley, in addition to Funxiang Valley's own position in the good faction cultivation world, it attracted everyone's attention. For a moment, the world was full of rumors. Everyone was guessing what exactly happened in Funxiang Valley. In just a few days, the usually peaceful southern border savage lands started to gather many unfamiliar faces, innumerable open or hidden powerhouses, all probing openly and secretly what exactly happened. This situation, naturally, Funxiang Valley was not happy to see. On the contrary, due to some unknown secret, Funxiang Valley was extremely furious. On one hand, Funxiang Valley was amiable towards Qingyun's sect, Tianyin Temple, etc., good faction big sect's disciples who came to inquire, treated them with good tea and water, at the end brushed it off with a natural disaster. On the other hand, towards the evil faction 3 big sects secret spying, Funxiang Valley within their own sphere of influence. For a moment in the vast lands of southern border with Funxiang Valley as the center, swords and shadows flashed. Just that whether it was the good faction or the evil faction, they all indistinctly felt that under Funxiang Valley's mysterious atmosphere, something was not normal. This time Funxiang Valley seemed to have received a huge shock. Almost all the disciples were mobilized, day and night searching nonstop in various parts of southern border. As for who or what they were searching for, they were secretive and could not be revealed. After a few days, the southern border's gloomy sky became much livelier. Often many dazzling beautiful lights flashed across the sky. Funxiang Valley's outstanding disciples were searching for something. Rumors also started to spread. What strange beast was born, or mysterious treasure shot up to the sky from the volcanic crater, all kinds of rumors, so on and so forth. What was even more outrageous was that there were rumors that Funxiang Valley had internal strife and that a rebel disciple killed the Valley Master Yun Elon. And correspondingly, Funxiang Valley Master Yun Elon indeed did not appear for several days. In the end, the rumor spread more and more ferocious. Even within a few days, it alarmed Qing Yun's sect Reverend Daoxian and Tianyin Temple Puhong Master. Both of them jointly sent out disciples to Funxiang Valley to inquire. Funxiang Valley did not know whether to laugh or cry, could only explain that the Valley Master was in seclusion and could not appear. The conclusive news was relayed back. Qing Yun's sect and Tianyin Temple were then relieved. Just that these 2 big sects' heads were such figures. How could they not guess that there must be something fishy in this? They secretly ordered their disciples not to rush back to the mountain, but to secretly investigate. Now that the world was in chaos, demons were running amok. Funxiang Valley had always been mysterious and ambiguous. That year in the Battle of Qingyun, they happened to be lacking troops. One could not help but to think of something. Therefore, because of Ghost Li's action of accidentally rescuing the 9-tailed celestial fox who had been suppressed for 300 years, it triggered the world situation, the southern border's winds and clouds gathering. Because Funxiang Valley had sent out numerous disciples to track and investigate, with Ghost Li and Xiao Bai's skills. Naturally, they would not be afraid of these disciples, but thinking that if their whereabouts were exposed, unavoidably there would be countless troubles, and if the important figures in Funxiang Valley were alarmed, they would lead a large group to pursue. Most likely it would be difficult to resist. After all, Funxiang Valley was 1,000 years old big sect. Their potential was unpredictable. Ghostly thought that the most important thing now was still to investigate the Black Shaman tribe who could save Baiyao. So after coming down from that small mountain, under Xiao Bai's suggestion, Ghostly found a remote village and used money to buy 2 sets of local clothes, one male and one female, and Xiaobai changed into them. The southern border was a remote place. The customs were naturally different from Central Plains. Even the ordinary clothes, compared to the Central Plains common people's clothes, had a different style. Because they were bought from a remote village, so the rough workmanship was expected. Wearing them, the biggest difference between these clothes and Central Plains clothes, other than the different styles, was the brighter colors. The men's clothes were dark blue as the base. The women's colors were complicated, resplendent. Because they had to avoid Funxiang Valley's eyes and ears, Ghostly and the rest were unable to fly, although Ghostly was anxious, but with Xiaobai's persuasion, saying that they had waited for 10 years. Could it be that when things came to a head, they could not even wait for a few days? If because of a moment of impatience, they attracted Funxiang Valley's pursuers, most likely the situation would be chaotic and instead, they would have to wait even longer. Although Ghostly was anxious, but he could not deny that Xiaobai's words were reasonable, the two of them walked slowly. They were dressed in southern border clothes, walking slowly. Along the way, they met several groups of Funxiang Valley disciples, but they did not recognize them. At most, because of Xiao Hui's unusual appearance, they took a few more glances. The most important thing was that night, Ghostly and Xiao Hui did not reveal themselves, so the Funxiang Valley people did not know what they looked like and only focused on investigating the strange movements of strangers. They instead ignored them. Right now, Ghostly and Xiao Bai were already walking on an ancient path 300 miles away from Funxiang Valley. It was the wilderness. Not a single figure could be seen on the road. Just less than an hour ago, they had just swaggered over from a group of Funxiang Valley disciples. The sky was hazy. The dark clouds moved lightly. Ghostly frowned slightly and walked forward. Contrary to him, Xiaobai, who was beside him, always had a smile on her face and high spirits, looking around along the way, gazing at the southern border scenery. Even though it was a desolate ancient path, in her eyes, it seemed to be the most beautiful scenery. Ghostly glanced to his side. The monkey Xiao Hui was sitting on Xiaobai's shoulder, calm and composed. Not knowing if it was because they were all rare spiritual creatures in the world, Xiao Hui was extremely affectionate towards the 9-tailed, celestial fox incarnation Xiaobai. These few days it seemed to spend more time with Xiaobai. Looking at Xiao Hui and Xiaobai joking with each other from time to time, emitting Gigi's sounds of laughter, Ghostly suddenly thought, if his old friend Zheng Shushu saw them like this, he would definitely be very envious. Xiaobai was wearing a southern border girl's ordinary clothes. The style was no different from ordinary people, just that this ordinary clothes, matched with her exceptional looks, immediately seemed to radiate light and heat, even more revealing an unprecedented elegance. As if this girl was born to wear this kind of clothes, everywhere she revealed the southern border girl's unique charm. Xiaobai seemed to notice Ghostly's gaze, turned and smiled, said, "Why, I am wearing this. Do I still look good?" Ghostly smiled faintly. With his character, he was unwilling to answer this kind of slightly frivolous topic. He changed the topic and asked, "I see you are extremely familiar with this southern border place's customs and environment, not to mention other things, just the mountain near Funxiang Valley and that ancient desolate small village. You can actually find it. Don't tell me you have been here before?" Xiaobai pursed her lips. Her eyes looked ahead, saw the distant mountains connected together, endless. It was the southern border's unique landform. An ancient path before her, meandering forward on both sides, either near or far. There were grotesque rocks and towering hills. The distant mountain horizon, connected, gloomy dark clouds hung on the peaks, drifting with the wind. She walked slowly after a long time sighed, faintly said, "I have not only been here before." Ghostly was slightly surprised, said, "What is it?" Xiaobai let out a long breath, smiled, and shook her head, as if wanting to shake off the past, said, "You don't know right. Our Fox Demon clan originated from here in the southern border, and I grew up in these barren mountains and unruly rivers." Ghostly was stunned for a moment, said, "Then why for these 1,000 years, the folklore of Central Plains, always had your Fox Demon shadow?" Xiaobai indifferently said, "That is because 1,000 years ago, I led our Fox Demon clan, left this place, headed to Central Plains, and finally settled in the southwest majestic Fox Mountain. Ghostly was shocked. For a moment he could not speak. After a long while he said, "What, you?" Xiaobai looked at him with interest, smiled. A glint flashed past her eyes, like ambiguity and also like the vicissitudes of life. "Didn't expect it, right? This is where your Ghost King sect headquarters is located. Speaking of which, the name Majestic Fox Mountain most likely came from our Fox Demon clan." Ghostly was silent for a long time, slowly said, "Then have you and Ghost King sect?" Xiaobai did not wait for him to finish, directly shook her head and said, "You don't have to worry about this. Our Fox Demon clan and Ghost King sect have been neighbors for hundreds of years and have always been peaceful. Not only that, in these hundreds of years, there were a few human-demon relationships. So, other than repaying you for saving me from Inferno Altar, knowing that you are a Ghost King sect disciple is also one of the reasons why I am willing to help you." Ghostly was then relieved, then thought of something, said, "Then after this matter is over, are you still going to return to Majestic Fox Mountain to visit your fellow clan members?" "Fellow clan members?" Xiao Bai's face slowly dimmed, looked up at the sky, after a long while softly said, "My fellow clan members have all been killed by me." Ghostly was stunned again. Xiao Bai gave a bitter laugh. Her expression turned even more desolate, but she did not wish to speak anymore. Ghostly was silent for a moment, diverted the topic, said, "We have already walked for 3 days. How far are we from that 7-mile cave that you mentioned?" Xiaobai looked at him. Her watery eyes swept past his face, said, 7-Mile Cave is the southern border Miao's largest settlement. According to my impression, 20 miles from here is a bustling place where various clans live together called Sky Water Stockade. From there to the south there is a treacherous small path. It is the path to the Miao people's 7-Mile Cave. Chapter 2:26. Following which, she smiled bitterly and said, "But I don't know, these 300 years, if there are any other changes in the situation in the southern border." Ghostly silently nodded, subconsciously quickened his steps. Xiaobai followed behind him. Her eyes lingered on him a few times and then looked ahead. Those mountain ranges were connected, towering and towering, majestic and precipitous, like a giant, watching over heaven and earth. On the ancient path, these few little people, Ghostly in these 10 years, had been to the southern border many times for Baiyao, more or less knew about the local customs and practices here. The southern border territory was vast and sparsely populated. Other than the 10,000 miles of the 10,000 Great Mountains in the extreme south, the people living in the southern border for generations were roughly divided into 5 main tribes, respectively: Miao, Tu, Zhuang, Li, and Gao Mountain 5 tribes. In terms of population, the Zhuang population was the largest, accounting for almost 40% of the total population of the southern border. In terms of territory, the Miao was the strongest, occupying the most fertile land. In terms of folkways, the Gaoshan tribe with the least population was the most ferocious. These 5 tribes, generations after generations, lived in this southern border. The 5 tribes each had their own language, but generally speaking, when they interacted, they used a common language similar to the Central Plains, just that more or less they had some local ethnic specialties. For so many years, naturally there were times when they communicated with each other, joined hands in joy, but there was also no lack of scheming against each other, conflicts between each other. Over the long years, it gradually formed a situation where the 5 tribes each occupied one area, but their territories intersected deep and deep. And where the various tribes' territories intersected, often there would be villages and towns where several tribes lived together. At most there were even 5 tribes living at the same place at the same time, living together. And the Tianshui Stockade that Xiaobai mentioned was located at the border of Miao, Zhuang, Tu, and Gao Mountain tribes, also the southern borderland, a rather famous bustling place. The sky gradually darkened. Nearing dusk, Ghostly, Xiaobai, and Xiao Hui, 2 humans and 1 monkey, finally walked into Tianshui Stockade. Although there was a stockade in the name, but it was different from the usual southern border stockades built on a mountaintop. Tianshui Stockade was built on a spacious flatland. North, south, east, and west roads leading out of the stockade. According to Xiao Bai's explanation, This place was originally built by the two tribe. The original location was not here, but on a mountain not far to the west, because of a clear spring at the top of the mountain, so-called Tianshui Stockade. Just that after the four tribes joined, the population increased. This place instead became a mixed place. As the number of merchants gradually increased, if they continued to live in the mountains, firstly, the place was small and inconvenient. Secondly, it was difficult to travel. Even though the people of the southern border were generally stronger and healthier than the people of the Central Plains, but no one was willing to climb the mountains every day to exercise their bodies. Gradually, people began to move to live at the foot of the mountain, and the number of people gradually increased. After a long time, all the people in the mountain village gradually moved down. With the prosperity of the trade between the four races, the number of merchants became more frequent, and the scale of the trade expanded. As for the original stockade at the top of the mountain, it gradually became deserted. Only the name Tianshui Stockade was retained. Right now the sky had just turned dark. There were still many people on the streets, coming and going, the surroundings noisy. Different languages could be heard, totally different from the desolation on the ancient path. Xiao Hui, who was sitting on Xiao Bai's shoulder, found it interesting. Its monkey head turned here and there, looking around, calling out incessantly. The three-eyed monkey, after all, stood out from the masses. Very soon it attracted the attention of the people on the streets. There were even a few children dressed in southern border tribal clothing, laughing and laughing, following behind them, making faces at Xiao Hui, teasing it. Xiao Hui was playful by nature. For a moment it became excited, its tail wagging, about to jump down a play. Fortunately, Ghostly humphed, dragged it over, and caught it. Xiao Hui was helpless, knew it could not escape, and could only climb up to Ghostly's shoulder, called out to the children behind, and also made the same faces back, making those children even more excited, their mouths chattering and laughing. Most likely they also found it very interesting. Ghostly frowned slightly, feeling slightly vexed, but not because of Xiao Hui's playfulness, but indistinctly thought of some other concerns. He turned his head to the side, saw Xiao Bai with a trace of smile on her lips, excitedly watching that group of children and Xiao Hui frolicking, the coarse hemp clothes, but how could it conceal her enchanting beauty? Not to mention that in this southern border where wind and frost were severe, most of the women looked ordinary and had dark skin. Even in the Central Plains, with the human form that Xiao Bai had transformed into after thousands of years of cultivation, under that delicate and beautiful appearance, the faint gentleness that was exuded, every frown and every smile had a charm that could make one fall in love with her. As expected, the next moment, in the midst of the children's frolicking and laughing, more and more people looked over, and those adults' gazes, very naturally and quickly, shifted from the monkey to that girl whose coarse hemp clothes could not conceal her beauty. In an instant, it was as if an invisible sound wave had spread out, causing everyone to raise their eyebrows in surprise. However, under the countless gazes, the woman did not show the slightest bit of shyness. Looking at her smiling face, it was as if she liked this kind of feeling. Ghostly felt a headache. Attracting so much attention was not his intention. He was contemplating if he should remind the girl beside him to quickly find a place to stay and wake up early tomorrow to head to that 7-mile cave to settle the official business. Just that, as if it was destined that his idea would not come true, the character that would inevitably appear in countless of stories actually also appeared at this moment. The legendary hoodlums, actually in the southern border, among the ethnic minorities, also existed. 3 people walked out from the crowd. All of them looked almost the same, tall, boorish, stocky, speaking in a half-baked, mixed local language, started to tease Xiao Bai. Hoodlum, black one. This girl is really beautiful. Xiao Bai smiled sweetly, using her hand to caress her face. Indescribable tenderness, said, "Really?" In that instant, the crowd burst into an uproar. The 3 hoodlums were overjoyed. Hoodlum B opened his clothes, revealing a good figure. "Little sister, follow me. I will let you eat spicy, drink fragrant." Many in the crowd immediately laughed. Xiao Bai glanced at Ghostly standing beside. The smile on her face did not diminish. Hoodlum C laughed at Hoodlum B. "Do you know what is called eat spicy and drink fragrant?" that is, eat spicy and drink fragrant. After speaking, he turned to Xiao Bai and said, "Little sister, my family has 10,000 mu of fertile land. You follow me, I guarantee you." He was halfway through his words. For a moment, he could not continue. Xiao Bai's smile deepened, as if it was from her heart. Her bright eyes were like water, as if it was about to flow out. Just that, her body, instead, took a step back, stood beside Ghostly, gently said, "I am someone who already has a husband." The surrounding crowd again burst into an uproar. Xiao Hui, who had already climbed up Ghostly's shoulder, with a sound, fell down from Ghostly's shoulder, landed on the ground. After a moment, for some reason, Xiao Hui suddenly crouched on the ground, using its paws to beat the ground with all its might, grinned and laughed loudly. Ghostly's face was gloomy, silently stood there, feeling the three hoodlums' fierce gazes, full of enmity looking at him. After a moment, the hoodlums rushed up. It seemed like the southern border proverb, after hundreds and thousands of years, it was still full of vitality and was carried out by the southern border people. Bang, bang, bang. Three sounds, three figures flew out, hit the wall by the roadside, and then fell heavily, loudly groaning. The crowd was dumbstruck. Ghostly indifferently said, "Let's go find a place to stay. Tomorrow morning we will leave." After speaking, he walked forward. Xiao Hui, who was crouching on the ground, caught up in a few steps, scurried up his shoulder, its mouth laughing nonstop, turned its head and made a face at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai smiled and followed up, walked to Ghostly, suddenly quietly said, "You see, I have been locked up for 300 years, so I am not considered old, right?" Ghostly did not say a word, only quickened his steps. Chapter 2:27. The southern border customs were very different from the Central Plains, just that after so many years, although it was remote, but there were still exchanges with the Central Plains. And the furs, ores, and other special products produced in the southern border had always had an excellent reputation in the Central Plains, attracting many Central Plains merchants to come and trade. Over time, the inns that originally did not exist in the southern border, under the influence of the Central Plains merchants, appeared in the most bustling towns. Ghostly and Xiao Bai were now in such an inn. The name was directly using the local name, Tianshui. Entering the inn, it was obvious that the tables and chairs were very influenced by the Central Plains culture, but the innkeeper and waiters were the local Zhuang people. The Zhuang in the southern border had the largest population, and their lives were relatively more affluent, deeply influenced by the Central Plains. Unlike the other tribes who still persisted in their hunting lifestyle, the Zhuang people had gradually started farming and trading. But even so, the Zhuang people were more peaceful. Most of the clansmen lacked that valiant spirit, and so, in terms of power, they were not as powerful as the Miao, who had a smaller population. Ghostly and Xiao Bai sat down. A waiter came to serve them. The sky was getting dark, but there were not many customers in the inn. This waiter, from his attire, was also a southern border Zhuang person. Most likely he had been working here for some time. His speech was actually quite fluent. "Two guests. What would you like to eat? Our inn still has clean rooms. The price is the most reasonable. It is famous far and wide." Ghostly nodded, said, "Leave 2 clean rooms for us. We will stay for the night." The waiter smiled and nodded, then said, "2 guests. I think you have not eaten yet. Would you like to order anything?" Ghostly was not hungry, but looking at Xiao Bai, he still decided to order something to eat, said, "Oh, give us 2 bowls of rice, and a few more." Xiao Bai, who was sitting beside, suddenly spoke, with a smile on her face, said, "Do you have soil stuffy oriole here?" Ghostly was surprised, looked at Xiao Bai. The waiter was also stunned, couldn't help but take another look at Xiao Bai, said, "Miss, don't tell me you have been to our southern border before. This signature dish, of course we have it." The smile on Xiao Bai's face deepened. Her eyes glimmered, as if she was recalling something, slowly said, "Oh, right, there's also 3 snake intestines, roasted bear tail, roasted autumn leaves, 5 small worms, black heart fruit." Her eyes glimmered. While speaking, she was thinking. At the beginning, she was rather slow, saying one dish after another, but towards the end, she spoke faster and faster. The names of the dishes were also extremely bizarre, inconceivable, definitely not something that Central Plains could have. Ghostly was stunned. And not only the waiter's smile turned into an awkward expression with his mouth wide. Even the shopkeeper, who was also came over. Xiaobai, after about 30 dishes in one breath, then stopped to take a break, turned to the shopkeeper and waiter, smiled and said, "These dishes, do you have them here?" The shopkeeper and waiter looked at each other. After a long while, the shopkeeper laughed dryly and said, "Miss, you are really knowledgeable. The many dishes you have just mentioned, all of them are the famous specialties of the southern border, just that many of the ingredients are not easy to find. Other than the soil stuffy oriole, our shop only has black heart fruit and roasted bear tail. I am extremely sorry." Xiao Bai's face revealed a trace of regret, but then smiled and said, "Then let's cook these 3 dishes first." The shopkeeper and waiter quickly acknowledged and went to busy themselves. Xiao Bai's eyes turned and saw Ghostly looking at her, smiled sweetly and said, "It's been several hundred years. I also don't know why. Suddenly, I especially want to taste these flavors of the past. You have been here before. Have you tried these dishes before?" Ghostly shook his head. In the past, when he came to the southern border, his mind was filled with searching for the black shaman tribe to save Bai Yao. How would he have the heart to consider these appetites? Usually he would just casually do it in the wilderness. This time, if not for the special circumstances, to avoid Funxiang Valley's pursuers everywhere. Plus, Xiao Bai was after all a lady, although she was 1,000-years-old evil spirit. It would not be good for her to spend the night in the wilderness. Therefore, she entered the town. He was silent for a moment, suddenly asked, "Soil stuffy oriole. I can roughly guess. What is black heart fruit?" Xiaobai smiled and said, "This is a fruit unique to the southern border, emerald green on the outside. The flesh is white and tender, but the flesh is black, fried in oil. The taste is very delicious." Ghostly frowned, said again, "That roasted bear tail. What is that? Don't tell me it is a black bear's tail? I have heard of bear paw and bear gall, but have never heard that a bear's tail can also be used in dishes." Xiaobai smiled and said, "This bear is not another bear. There is a beast unique to the southern border, called long-tailed bear. Its size is far smaller than the black bear and white bear that we are familiar with, but its meat is delicious, far for what they can compare with. Especially that long tail is where the essence lies. In the southern border, it is very famous." Ghostly was silent. Xiaobai glanced at him, suddenly said, "Strange, you usually don't seem to be concerned about anything. Why is it that once this dish is mentioned, you seem interested?" Ghostly was surprised. For a long time did not speak. He grew up in Qingyun Hill Big Bamboo Valley. Not long after he started to cook, towards the culinary arts, he really had some talent and interest. If it was in an ordinary family, most likely he would become a cook and most likely still make a small name for himself. Just that now. Ghostly sighed softly. Suddenly his interest died away and did not want to say anything. Xiao Bai looked at him with interest, her eyes glimmering, not knowing what she was thinking. Only Xiao Hui was still restless, looking left and right, softly calling out from time to time, as if anticipating something. The night was quiet. Tianshui stockade, which had been bustling for a day, gradually quietened down. Tianshui Inn had 2 floors. The second floor was the guest rooms. Ghostly observed carefully. Tonight only he and Xiao Bai were staying. It seemed that although this place was bustling, but at this time of the year, the world was in chaos and not many Central Plains merchants came to the southern border. And the southern border locals usually did not stay in the inn. Xiao Bai's room was next to Ghostly's. The walls were separated by wooden planks and did not have much soundproofing effect. Indistinctly, he could hear the soft laughter and noise from the other side. The monkey Xiao Hui ran over to play with Xiao Bai again. Although Xiao Hui would still run back to sleep with Ghostly every night, but for some reason, Xiao Bai seemed to be especially close with Xiao Hui. Now Xiao Hui liked to stick to this 1,000-year fox spirit whenever it had nothing to do. Ghostly lay in the room for a while. He had not stayed in the inn for a long time. Instead, he was not used to it. Unknowingly, after a long time, it was already late at night, but he still did not feel sleepy. He could not help but felt vexed and stood up, slowly walked to the window, pushed it open, and looked out. Different from the day, right now in the southern border's night sky, the dark clouds gradually dispersed. Although the cloud layer was still there, but through the gaps, a trace of moonlight quietly peeped out. The moonlight was clear like frost-like snow, faintly spilled down, landed on his body. In the long secular world, all living beings were in deep sleep. The wilderness was quiet without a human voice. Only in an unknown street corner, low cries of insects could be heard, the sounds mournful. Darkness shrouded the earth. Gazing from the window, thousands of miles of mountains, the deep night sky. In the southern borders desolate and lonely night, suddenly, the past-like tide surfaced in his heart. Not long ago, that remote village child was immersed in the tumbling waves of the secular world, drifting with the waves. Occasionally looking back, there was actually no one accompanying him. Life was really lonely. The man under the moonlight lowered his head and did not speak. See, a piercing sound unhurriedly traveled over. Ghostly looked up, his brows slightly frowning, a light in the horizon, like a meteor sweeping across the night sky, streaked across the horizon, over Tianchui's stockade sky, landed towards the west. And behind it, there were still 3 lights, pursuing relentlessly. With Ghost Lee's current eyesight and experience, naturally with one look he could tell that these 4 lights were cultivators traveling in the air. These 4 lights pursued back and forth in the night sky. Although the 3 lights behind could not catch up with the light in front, but the fleeing people were also unable to shake off the pursuers. After a while, the first light seemed to have made a decision, landed from the sky. Looking at the direction, it was at Tianshui's stockade's southwest direction. Following which, the pursuing 3 lights also landed. Ghostly hesitated for a moment, felt that tonight his mind was not at peace. He really did not wish to stand here alone again. Waved his right hand, quietly transformed into a green light, flew towards where the 4 lights landed. As his figure became smaller and smaller, with a creak, the window of the room next to Ghost Lee's was also pushed open. Chapter 228. Xiao, by carrying Xiao Hui, gazed towards the direction where Ghostly flew to. The next moment, Ghost Lee's figure disappeared into the darkness. Xiao Bai's face was calm. There was no expression on her fair face, only the light in her eyes flashed strangely. Ghostly stealthily flew all the way. Not long after he discovered that the place where the figures landed was where Tianshui Old Stockade was, that mountaintop which had already been abandoned for many years. Just when he had just entered that stockade, a muffled low cry was heard from ahead, followed by an angry voice mixed with a familiar laughter. Ghostly immediately frowned. This laughter was gentle and seductive, indistinctly had the power to bewitch. It was Jean Pinger's voice. Ghostly hesitated for a moment, hid his body in a dark corner, unhurriedly swept forward. On the originally quiet and deserted street, broken fences and tiles, a desolate scene. At this time, the sky became a bit clearer. The clouds gradually dispersed, and the moonlight gradually brightened, illuminating the deserted mountain stronghold a bit. Jean Pinger's face still hung her eternal smile, smiling as she stood in the middle of the street, facing a young man who was glaring angrily at her. This person was someone Ghostly recognized, Funxiang Valley's outstanding disciple-y son. And on the street behind him, there was another Funxiang Valley disciple lying on the ground. Looked like he was injured by Jean Pinger just now, his clothes starting from the left side of his chest straight down, a very deep wound, groaning weakly. Just that, Ghostly's eyes only glanced at the 3 of them. After a moment, his eyes completely landed on the last person. In the desolate night, on the desolate street, behind Jean Pinger in a small abandoned building, a girl in white, carrying a long sword on her back, stood on the eaves, facing the wind, her clothes gently fluttering. Her snow-like skin, under the clear moonlight, made one feel that the color was somewhat pale, an absolute beauty. This night, this moonlight, so it was because of her that it was so beautiful and bright. Lu Sweki, in those familiar bright eyes, whose figure was reflected, Ghostly was stunned. In the darkness, he quietly looked at the woman who seemed to be out of this world. The wind and frost of the world, 10 years of time, seemed to have not touched her in the slightest. Therefore, when people looked at her, the first thing they saw was her cold, fairy-like figure in the moonlight. Demoness. Li Sun's handsome face was full of anger. He and Lu Sweki, one in front and one behind, blocked Jean Pinger, but when they landed, this evil faction, evil woman suddenly attacked, first bewitched the Funxiang Valley junior brother behind him with bewitching art, and then injured him with the purple light blade. If it wasn't for Li Sun, this junior apprentice brother would have lost his life. However, what Li Sun was more concerned about, other than his junior brother's injuries, was something else. What exactly did you do to my junior sister Yan Hong? Quickly hand her over. Jean Pinger smiled. Her eyes suddenly drifted, intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the darkness behind Li Sun, where Ghostly was hiding, said, "You also said, that is your junior sister, not my junior sister. How would I know?" Li Sun's expression was furious, obviously very concerned about this junior sister, angrily said, "If not for Shangwan teacher Uncle Sharp Eyes, we would still be kept in the dark by you. You deliberately killed our Fan Xiang disciples. This enmity must be paid by you. If you know what's good for you, hand over junior sister Yan Hong as soon as possible." I am so scared." Jean Pinger used her hand to pat her chest, but her face was full of smiles. Where was the slightest trace of fear? Instead, her gentleness deepened, softly said, "You all are after all from the good faction. How can so many of you bully a weak girl like me?" A cold snort was heard from Lu Sueki. Li Sun glanced at that beautiful figure standing high up. His face darkened, spoke to Jean Pinger. "Evil girl, if you continue to be so stubborn, I will not be courteous." Before he could finish, Jean Pinger suddenly laughed charmingly. Purple light suddenly shone from her right sleeve. Li Sun immediately concentrated and prepared. This evil girl was full of craftiness, and her weapon was extremely sharp. It was really not a small matter, with that strike just now. Although the junior brother behind him was affected by her bewitching skill, but after many years of cultivation, he was still not her match. It could be seen that her skills were high. Just that Li Sun had always been arrogant. His own cultivation was also high, although he was vigilant, but he did not have the slightest fear. And right now, there was a peerless beauty coldly watching. Ever since he first met her 10 years ago, he had admired Lu Sueki for a long time. He must not lose face in front of the beauty. He was about to concentrate and face the enemy, but unexpectedly the crafty Jean Pinger was only making a feint. Suddenly she paused. Her body turned in a purple light, became one with the sword, and attacked Lu Sueki from behind. In a blink, the purple light neared. Lu Sueki's face was like frost. A sharp sound, immortal energy surged. Blue light shot out. Tianya's celestial sword suddenly unsheathed, placed horizontally in front of her chest. Li Sun watched from behind, felt an inexplicable anxiety, rode his sword to pursue. Unexpectedly, when Jean Pinger's purple light sword came into contact with Tianya, she used the force to retreat. As fast as lightning she retreated, just retreated from below Li Sun. Li Sun was shocked. For a moment he could not stop to pursue, and Lu Sueki wanted to pursue, but was blocked by Li Sun, could only press his body down. Both of them looked over at the same time. The direction Jean Pinger flew towards was exactly where Li Sun was standing. There was still an injured Funxiang Valley disciple lying on the ground, panic-stricken. Li Sun turned pale with fright. Just now he only wanted to show off in front of Lu Sueki and forgot that his junior brother behind him already did not have the slightest ability to resist. Right now he was extremely regretful. With a loud roar, his body like lightning, pursued with all his might. Lu Sueki followed behind him, chasing after Jean Pinger. In a blink, Jean Pinger had already reached that Funxiang Valley disciple. Suddenly, with the tip of her feet, kicked that person up, flew backwards. Li Sun quickly caught him. Unexpectedly, his hands were covered with blood. In a blink, his robe was dyed red. Jean Pinger's kick had already ended the young disciple's life. Li Sun's eyes looked like it was about to spit fire. In that moment of delay, Lu Sueki had already passed him and chased after Jean Pinger. And Jean Pinger's figure just happened to pass that dark corner. Quietly, in that instant, Jean Pinger's voice was heard urgently. "Help me block that girl." In the darkness, that person snorted. His disdain was obvious, and he moved, obviously not willing to participate in this matter. Unexpectedly, in that split second, Jean Pinger suddenly hurriedly but loudly and clearly said 3 words, 7 Mile Cave. These 3 words, like lightning, struck down Ghost Lee's body, which was about to fly up. Jean Pinger's eyes and face, filled with a mysterious smile, in an instant swept past him. In the next moment, Lu Sueki's white figure, chased after, was right before his eyes. Who knew? In that instant, whose figure flashed past his mind. Green light floated up. Lu Swecky's frosty expression instantly changed, a little puzzled, a little perplexed, a little delighted, and also a little angry. Tianya and soul-devouring, blue and red lights, reflected each other in the night, drifting far away. Li Sun swept past Lu Swecky, pursuing Jean Pinger. After all, Jean Pinger was the more important target, especially after she killed that junior brother who came with them. Just that, in the air, he quietly turned back, watching that man and woman silently facing each other on that deserted street. That trace of fire flashed past deep in his eyes. It was that blazing. Far away, Jean Pinger's laughter was heard. That voice was gentle with a trace of teasing. Ghostly heard it and was speechless. The moonlight, like water, spilled on this desolate hilltop, the quiet street. The girl in front of him, dressed in white like snow, the long sword in her hand, bright like autumn waters. In her bright eyes, staring deeply at him, who was it? Note 1. 7 Mile Cave, historically the Miao people's largest settlement, because it was rumored to be 7 miles wide. It got its name. It was not known when it was developed, destroyed by the late Yuan and early Ming soldiers' encirclement and suppression. It was rumored that this place was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Only a narrow passageway connected to the outside world had always been the spiritual pillar of the Miao people. Now the exact location was already difficult to verify, but looking at the information, it seemed to be in 1983 Guangxi Heong. Discovered at Daping Village, the surrounding terrain was extremely similar and led by the Miao people. On the nearby hilltop, there was a dog deity cave. Inside, there was a dog deity-shaped huge rock, which the Miao people worshipped, suspected it should be here. Another note, dog deity, Miao people's legend, the soldiers attacked in the middle of the night. The Miao people were all asleep. A stone dog on the hilltop suddenly barked loudly, startling the clansmen. Hence they joined forces to resist the enemy. The entire clan was saved. Since then they worshipped the dog deity. Incense offerings continued year after year. Chapter 229. The surroundings were quiet. The night was deep. It was a desolate time. The long street was silent. The bright moon hanging in the horizon. Its clear radiance spilled down, casting long shadows of the two people standing on the desolate street. What kind of emotion, like thousands of words twisting around the heart, just that when faced, they could not speak. The lonely night wind gently blew the clothes. Tianya, in Lu Swecky's hand, glimmered with faint blue light, slowly drooped down, kept back. Ghostly was silent. Lu Swecky stared at the man in front of her. Under the moonlight, Ghostly suddenly felt suffocated. No fighting, no killing, and even no bleeding, but for some reason, every time he faced this beautiful girl, under her gaze, there would always be an inexplicable emotion. That cold as snow, peerless face, as if it was the first time they met. That aloof and beautiful girl. Just that, not long ago, his own shadow appeared in her eyes. That girl just now, is she He Huan, Sec Jean Pinger? Lu Swecky suddenly quietly asked. Ghostly was stunned, quietly nodded, said yes. Lu Swecky looked at him, a glint deep in her eyes, faintly said, "You have always been with her?" Almost subconsciously, Ghostly immediately shook his head and said, "No, I have nothing to do with her." His voice suddenly turned low, felt a trace of abnormality in his emotions, as if he wanted to explain something. But the glint in Lu Swecky's eyes had already disappeared, as if some pressure on his shoulders was suddenly released. Even his expression seemed to have softened. Just that, between the two of them, there was still a distance like a deep chasm. The moonlight, like water, lingered on this desolate street. Jean Pinger and Li Sun's pursuing figures had long disappeared. In the huge village, it was as if only the two of them were left. They were irreconcilable good and evil, but no matter which one of them, right now neither of them had the intention to fight. In the cold, clear moonlight, Lu Swecky suddenly said, "You can accompany me for a walk?" Ghostly looked up, a trace of surprise in his eyes. Unhurriedly walking on this desolate street, the deep night, the moonlight like water. Both sides of the street were dilapidated fences and broken walls, extremely dilapidated. However, when the night wind blew, There seemed to be a touch of gentleness amidst the tranquility of this mountain peak that was thousands of miles away from his hometown. The two of them walked side by side, but they were still 3 feet away from each other. Intentionally or unintentionally, they seemed to be avoiding something. However, in such a bleak and desolate night, how could one's emotions not be entangled? A faint fragrance floated in the wind beside him, faintly discernible. Do you still remember the first time we competed in Ching Yun Hill 7 Peaks tournament? Lu Sweki suddenly broke the silence, quietly said. Ghostly paused, feeling surprised. In his impression, Lu Sweki was not a talkative person. But for some reason, she seemed a little strange tonight. Even so, he still nodded his head and said, I remember that you were able to use the divine sword lightning-wielding Truchan at that time. It was truly amazing. Lu Sweki glanced at him and said indifferently, but I actually lost that competition. Ghostly was silent and then quietly said, at that time, regardless if it was Taoism or cultivation, you were far above me. Actually, I lost. Lu Sweki's face revealed a trace of sadness, softly said, actually, I knew at that time you purposely held back at the last moment. But I also don't know why, could not control my competitive heart. At that time, no matter what, I could not tell the jubilant teacher and teacher uncle the rest the truth. Ghostly smiled and said, these small matters, after so many years, why do you still keep it in your heart? Lu Sweki raised her head, looked at the bright moon in the horizon, quietly lost in thought. Her beauty, under the moonlight, was like a flower blooming brightly. From that time onwards, I have remembered you in my heart. She softly, faintly said. Ghost Lee's body shook, abruptly lifted his head, no matter what he would never expect. From the usually cold and frosty Lu Sweki, such words would come out from her mouth. Just that looking at that elegant lady's beautiful figure in the moonlight, it was clearly right before his eyes. In his heart, there was suddenly an ominous premonition, like a disaster stealthily coming, quietly waiting ahead. He could feel it, but could not escape. Later, we went to Kongsang Mountain's Forsaken Abyss together, fought with the Falcon, fought with the Nether Spirits and evil spirits. You risked your life to save me. I also did the same to you. She softly said, her voice drifted and a little bit unreal. Ghostly, no, it was like at this moment he once again became that Shah Danon. The past, one by one, appeared before his eyes. But he could not say a word. At that time, we were in a desperate situation, struggling on the verge of death, but I was never afraid. If I had died with you like that, She turned around and faced the man. Her eyes shone with a brilliance that had never appeared before, as well as a myriad of tenderness that had never appeared in the depths of her heart. Even her snow-white skin and cheeks were faintly tinged with a faint pink. It was a breathtaking beauty. I am also willing, she said slowly, but with the firmness that could cut through ice and snow. The night was just right. The night breeze blew. The two people, facing each other, suddenly became silent. Ghost Lee's heart was in a mess. Thousands of thoughts came one after another in his mind. But it was like in the chaotic, surging tide, there was a voice shouting, Bailu. Instantly, he was chilled from head to toe. His blood was chilled. His heart was chilled. Anan quietly looked at the man in front of her, saw the changes on his face, one by one. At first confused, then perplexed, perhaps there was a trace of panic, but suddenly it was indifference, a coldness that wrapped herself tightly. But the gentleness in her eyes did not lessen a bit, still quietly said. Later, Lubo Hill, Peak of Widows, things happened one after another. I stood at the side, watched you gradually change. Until the end, on Peak of Widows, under Zhu Xian's sword, that Miss Bailu blocked that sword for you, I knew you can no longer turn back. Her lips revealed a smile, but it was full of bitterness, faintly said, you really also did not turn back. Ghostly secretly clenched his fists, his nails dug deep into his palms. He breathed hard, clenched his teeth tightly, forcing his indifference not to collapse instantly. Just how could he be able to face this girl coldly? Why are you doing this? He quietly said. Anan smiled forlornly, her eyes blurred, her figure under the moonlight, desolate yet beautiful. I did not regret 10 years, my heart is still thinking of you. If possible, I am willing to give up everything to follow you to the ends of the earth. But in the end, it is not possible. She bit her lips, quietly, slowly repeated, "Not possible, not possible," and then looked up. Her lips were so white. The skin on her face was so pale, it looked almost transparent. Only her eyes, bright like the lonely moonlight hanging high up in the sky. Qin Yun's sect nurtured me. Teacher doted on me, loved me, and taught me. No matter what, I cannot betray Qin Yun. Today, saying all these to you is to let you understand my feelings, and then in front of you, cut off my 10 years of wishful thinking. Her fair hands, tightly holding Tianya, as if using all her strength to say these words. Each word, like a sharp blade, fell into Ghost Lee's heart, but he remained silent, did not say anything. Deeply gazed, this man who was once so engraved in the depths of her heart, just standing in front of her, yet seemed to be separated by the ends of the earth. Tianya unsheathed, a beautiful arc flashing with blue light, flashed past in the air, in front of Ghost Lee drew down. In a deserted street, between the two of them, just a step away from Ghost Lee, drew out a deep fissure. Separating the two of them, the moonlight was desolate. The night was already boundless. Her white clothes like snow, fluttering without wind, like a fairy in her bright eyes, thousands of tenderness, thousands of pain, all deep in her heart. After parting tonight, when we meet again, you and I will be mortal enemies. There is not a trace of blood on her pale face. Even her body began to tremble slightly. For the past 10 years in my infatuation, I would dance the sword at the back of the mountain. She faintly said, "Tonight, let me dance for the last time." Tianya, celestial sword, made a clear sound like a phoenix's cry, straight up to the 9 heavens. The girl in white clothes like snow flew up in the desolate, beautiful moonlight, like a 9 heavens fairy descending to the mortal world, danced crazily. That sword light was faint like a dream, dancing to the thousands of years of remnant emotions. The past years slowly surfaced, leisurely passing by. Who was it that sighed softly, whose eyes were hazy, the sword light like snow, whose heart was it that hurt? She was infatuated. She danced alone. The wind blew. The clouds gradually dispersed. The broken fences and broken walls scattered. Rubble flew everywhere. Dust flew. The wind mournfully whistled. Her figure floated, like floating in the wind. The wind gathered from all directions. The sky darkened again, leaving only a clear shadow, faintly drifting. What was it that quietly roared in his heart? What was it that impulsively cried out in his chest? He could not. His body trembled. Maybe he had to walk forward? That foot lifted in the air, looked like it was about to step over the deep mark on the ground. The wind howled, the shadow like frost. The sword like autumn water descended from the sky. The sharp sound pierced through the air, but suddenly stopped in front of his eyebrows. The howling wind gradually quieted down. The rubble rolling around slowly stopped. The sky opened again. The moonlight brightened again, clear like water. Ainan's peerless face was before him, like ice, like frost. Only that pair of bright eyes seemed to still have faint emotions, gentle like water. Their eyes all landed on that deep mark in the middle. Tianya's celestial sword's chill seemed to come from the sword tip, chilled his body, making him suddenly wake up from his blurry dream. Her face was so beautiful that she did not look like a mortal. Ghost Lee's footsteps stopped in the air, slowly retracted. Ainan's hand, which was holding the sword, slowly drooped down. That person's body, finally still quietly retreated from this deep mark. And then she smiled. That smile was like the lily that bloomed brilliantly in the night, in both her past life and this life. But the next moment, she frowned and bent down, softly moaned, spat out a mouthful of blood. Spots of dark red spilled on her white clothes like bright and demonic flowers. She was still smiling, took a last look at that man, turned, rode her sword, flew up, transformed into a white light, streaked across the night sky, under the silent bright moon, disappeared into the horizon, leaving a lonely man quietly looking at the street in front of him, that red-stained, deep mark. In the darkness, the nine-tailed celestial fox Xiao Bai hugged Xiao Hui, watching everything that happened on that street. Xiao Hui seemed uneasy, moved a little in her embrace. Xiao Bai gently patted its head, stretched out her slender finger to her lips, making a gesture for it not to speak. Xiao Hui quieted down, but its eyes kept staring at its master's desolate figure, not relaxing for even a moment. Not knowing how long Ghostly had been standing in front of that deep mark on the street, he had been like that, standing there, not moving. And Xiao Bai also seemed to be very patient, quietly waiting in the darkness at this moment. Even the usually restless Xiao Hui also became especially quiet. Finally, Ghostly's body moved a little, and then, as if it was very strenuous, turned his back and turned his head. Looking from afar, this man's face was like dead ash, extremely haggard. Xiao Hui's body restlessly stirred a little again. From afar, Ghostly seemed to be whispering something, but no one could hear clearly. After a moment, he looked up blankly and finally unhurriedly left. After he had gone far, Xiao Bai brought Xiao Hui out, came to that deep mark which Anan had slashed with Tianya's celestial sword. She quietly watched, after a long while sighed. The love in this world really makes one heartbroken. Pitiful these two, so outstanding, but like fools. Ji. A sharp cry was heard. Xiao Bai was startled. It was the monkey Xiao Hui who was unwilling. It jumped down from Xiao Bai, sat on the ground beside, hatefully, and did not speak. It even imitated a person's angry look, crossed its arms in front of its chest, both its cheeks puffed up, looking angry. Xiao Bai laughed in spite of herself, quietly said, "You don't like me saying your master is a fool?" Xiao Hui hurriedly nodded, called out a few times. Its eyes blinked, although it still looked angry, but its long tail quietly retracted, gently coiled around Xiao Bai's ankle. Xiao Bai smiled and shook her head, squatted down, gently stroked the monkey's head, and then her eyes slowly drifted away. After a long while, she softly said, "Actually, how would you know? My wish for thousands of years is just to be this kind of fool for once, and then there will also be a fool who treats me well. If that girl really wanted to sever all ties, that sword would have long stabbed down. I saw at the end, although she pointed her sword at Ghostly, but in her heart, she actually hoped very much that Ghostly would disregard everything and cross over. Just that if Ghostly crossed over, he would not be Ghostly anymore. In his heart, there is still Bai Yao." Xiao Bai quietly said. Xiao Hui did not seem to understand, used its hand to scratch its head, its three eyes staring blankly at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai was stunned for a moment, suddenly smiled and came back to her senses, stretched out her hand to carry Xiao Hui, smiled and said, "Forget it, their matters, the knot in their hearts. They have to depend on themselves to untie it. Moreover, what will happen in the future? Who can say clearly? Don't you think so, Xiao Hui?" Xiao Bai raised Xiao Hui in front of her, smiled and asked. Xiao Hui's tail swayed and swayed in the air, called out a few times, shook its head but not knowing if it understood or not. Chapter 230. Funxiang Valley, Tianxiang Residence. This was a quiet place deep in Funxiang Valley, built close to the mountain range. Three sides were surrounded by towering walls. Only the front door was ajar, making it hard to see the situation inside. Even though Funxiang Valley had undergone such a huge change these few days, but in the vicinity, there were still no Funxiang Valley disciples roaming about, because this was Funxiang Valley Master Yin Yilan's residence, and also his closed-door cultivation place. Ever since Yin Yilan started his closed-door cultivation, this place forbade all Funxiang Valley disciples from entering. Of course, the Funxiang Valley disciples outside, naturally guarded like an iron wall. And those who were able to enter Tianxiang residence, other than Shang Wan, so whom Yin Yilan heavily relied on, only his direct disciple Li Sun could enter and meet his teacher. As for the rest, including the elders like Lu Shun and the rest, they were also prohibited from entering. Even when Funxiang Valley Inferno altar was infiltrated, the suppressed nine-tailed celestial fox for 300 years was released, even the legendary Funxiang Valley treasure, Inferno Mirror, could possibly appear. Yun Elon actually did not come out, only let Shangguan so take charge of the situation. In that small courtyard, what exactly was he doing? This question lingered in the minds of many Funxiang Valley disciples. The sky gradually brightened. Shangguan Su, in the slightly humid morning air, gently pushed open this door, walked in, and then closed the door. Appearing in front of him was a small courtyard that he was already familiar with, a few Bodhi trees, gently swaying their branches in the morning breeze. Other than a small path in the middle, the surroundings were all green grass. Other than that, there was nothing else. The leader of one of the three great good faction sects. His residence seemed to be simple to the extent of simplicity. At the end of the small path, there was a small house with white tiles and gray walls, built against the mountain, the door made of paulownia wood painted purple, similarly ajar. Shangguan Su walked over, pushed the door open, and closed it again. The surroundings immediately quieted down, as if all the worldly disturbances were shut out by him with a raise of his hand. In the room, there was no one, only a few simple furniture. On the tables and chairs, there seemed to be a thin layer of dust. Shangguan Su composed himself, walked straight into the room, came to a cabinet, pulled open the left drawer, put his hand in, and seemed to turn something. After a moment, a low voice was heard from behind him. The entire wall slowly retreated to the right, revealing the hard rock of the mountain wall and a secret passage that was only wide enough for one person to walk through. Shangguan Su did not hesitate, walked in. Not long after, his figure disappeared into the secret tunnel. The door slowly closed again. Not a trace could be seen. In the dark passage, there were pebbles the size of pebbles embedded in them at intervals to illuminate the surroundings. As he walked, he didn't feel stuffy at all. Naturally, there was another ventilation channel here. This secret passage was not long, and he soon reached his destination. It was a stone room that was about the same size as the room outside. There was nothing in the stone chamber except for a screen in the middle, blocking his view. Suddenly, an extremely old voice came from behind the screen. "Is that junior brother Shangguan?" Shangguan Su walked 2 steps forward, stopped about 4-5 steps away from the screen, respectfully said, "Yes, senior brother. How is your body?" That voice seemed to be the world-renowned Funxiang Valley Master Yun Elon. Just that for some reason, this good faction giant who was on par with Qing Yun's sect, Reverend Daoxian, and Tianyin Temple Puhong Master, right now sounded like a dying old man whose essence was scattered and his vital energy was lacking. He was heard laughing quietly, indifferently said, "My body? Can I still get up? Just like this? Slowly wait for death." Shangguan Su's expression changed, his expression complicated. He was about to speak but was cut off by Yun Elon's weak voice. "How is the matter?" Shangguan Su was silent for a moment, said, roughly found out, the one who instigated the human fish people that night was evil sect Hehuan's sect Jean Pinger. Most likely because in the Death Marsh, Hehuan's sect disciples were killed by the human fish people, so she took revenge. Yun Elon was silent for a moment behind the screen. His voice suddenly deepened, said, "Then did she detect our secret plan?" Shangguan Su's body suddenly paused. Just at this moment, the voice behind the screen was suddenly filled with majesty. "From what I see, not yet." "That's good." Yun Elon was obviously relieved, said, "Otherwise, if the matter is leaked out, many years of hard work will inevitably go to waste." Shangguan Su nodded and said, "Senior brother, don't worry." Yun Elon paused, said, "That person who sneaked into the Inferno altar and released the nine-tailed celestial fox evildoer. Have you found out?" Shangguan Su said, "Last night, Li Sun Shirji and Ku Wei tracked Jean Pinger near Tinshui Stockade. Heard from him this morning that evil sect Ghost King's sect Ghostly also appeared there, ambushed, and caused Kuruhue to be killed. Luckily, last night, Jade and Anan, who came to southern border to ask Master Doyle Shan about Xixiang, passed by and lent a helping hand. Then they were able to escape from the 2 evil people's pincer attack." "Ghostly." Yun Elon's voice paused, said, Don't tell me it is that Zhang Xiao fan who betrayed Jade 10 years ago. Shangguan nodded, said, that is that person. That year, Jade battle shook the world. Zhang Xiao fan betrayed Jade. In a short 10 years, his cultivation improved greatly. Now he is already the #1 general under Master Vim's command. Yin Elon snorted, said, that old fellow Doyle Shun is getting old. His head is also a little muddled. He has such a talent, but can't use it. Shangguan smiled, then said, Li Sun Shurji came back and said he suspected that the person who sneaked into Inferno Altar that night was ghostly, and to save Nine-Tailed Celestial Fox, without our Funxiang Valley's secret incantation, only the Inferno Mirror with the 1,000 Fire Essence can release the Inferno Seal. From his point of view, most likely the Inferno Mirror is with Ghostly. Yin Elon was silent for a while, suddenly said, what do you think? Shangguan stood behind the screen. His face changed. After a moment, respectfully said, I also think it is highly possible. Yin Elon's voice came from behind the screen, said, that year when I met old Taoist Doyle Shun, he boasted that he was a righteous sect, always had the thought of letting go, not killing wrongly, and praised me with that. Do you still remember? Shangguan Su was startled, did not know why Yin Elon suddenly brought up this long-ago matter, but he could only nod and said, that's right. I was also beside senior brother at that time. I remember clearly Reverend Doyle Shun indeed said so. Yin Elon smiled faintly, said, but 10 years ago, on Qing Yun Hill Tongtian Peak, when he used Zhu Xian ancient sword to strike that disciple called Zhang Xiaofan. What was his mood? I'm afraid he would rather kill wrongly than let go. Shangguan Su was speechless. Yin Elon quietly laughed and then said, you go. This matter, it is better for you to take charge. Shangguan Su hesitated for a moment, but still asked, then ghostly. Yin Elon's voice was clearly heard from behind the screen. Rather kill wrongly than let go. Shangguan Su's face muscles twitched. Then he nodded and said, yes. After speaking, he turned and left. Not long after, his figure disappeared in the secret passage. The next moment, a deep sound of mechanism was heard. Evidently, he had opened the secret door and left. In the silent stone room, Yin Elon's laughter suddenly rang out, carrying a trace of desolation, as well as a trace of mockery. You pushed all your thoughts on his son, saying that it was his deduction. Do you think I don't know? 300 years ago, you failed in your duty and lost the Inferno Mirror, but 300 years later, junior brother, you still did not improve. He. The desolate and desolate laughter in the cold stone chamber slowly reverberated. Leaving Tianxiang residence, Shangguan Su walked out of that door for some reason. With his level of cultivation, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. He calmed himself down, muttered to himself for a moment, and then walked outside. Along the way, he was familiar with the twists and turns and arrived in front of a majestic palace hall. On the signboard hung 3 words, Mountain River Hall. This name matched with this lofty and majestic hall. It really had some taste of looking down on the world. Not sure if it was because when the Funxiang Valley ancestors built this hall to receive guests, they also thought that one day, the taste of being the best in the world. Shangguan Su thought in his heart, slowly walked in. There were people sitting in the hall, other than the Funxiang Valley disciples standing at the side. The guests were mainly good faction people who came to pay their respects. There were about a dozen of them. Li Sun was sitting with them. And in Shangguan Su's eyes, the most important ones were actually the 2 people sitting at the top. Lu Sueki, Fa Xiang. These 2 outstanding disciples of the 2 famous sects came from the sects behind them. Therefore, although their ages were not as high as the other elders, but their positions were instead in front. Chapter 231. Fa Xiang was still in his white monk robe, a friendly smile on his face, conversing with Li Sun with a smile, behaving appropriately. And Li Sun and Fa Xiang could be considered to have known each other for a long time. They were rather happy to meet, chatting happily. Just that while chatting, his eyes kept glancing at Lu Sueki, who was sitting beside Fa Xiang. Shangguan Su saw it all. When everyone saw him walking into the hall, one by one stood up. Shangguan Su smiled and returned the greeting, walked to the seat of honor. His eyes unexpectedly also glanced at Lu Sueki and Fa Xiang. The 2 of them bowed to him at the same time. Lu Sueki was still silent. Fa Xiang smiled and said, "Long time no see. Shangwan teacher uncle is as healthy as before. It is really rare." Shangwansu shook his head and laughed, said, "Old, already useless." After speaking, he gestured for everyone to sit down. A thought flashed in his mind. These few years, Fa Xiang's reputation in Tianyin Temple and the world's good faction was like the sun at high noon. All parties believed that he would be the next Tianyin Temple abbot. So this time he represented Tianyin Temple Puhong Master. It was not unexpected. But Qin Yun Hillside seemed to have heard that their main sect disciple Xiao Yikai was the most valued young disciple by Reverend Dao Xian. Of course, Lu Sueki's limelight these few years was also very dazzling and strong. In addition to her exceptional beauty, the world's cultivators took delight in talking about her. Shang Guansu's thoughts turned, secretly guessed that Qin Yun's sect sending Lu Sueki. Could it be that they had some other intentions, but naturally he would not show it on his face? Everything was normal. He smiled and spoke to the crowd. "Everyone, I am Shang Guansu. Here, I'm very grateful for everyone's concern for our valley. The volcano eruption a few days ago, it was indeed a natural change, thanks to everyone's blessings. Our valley did not suffer much damage." Fa Xiang smiled and said, "Ba, that is the best. But I heard the rumors. Fun Xiang Valley Master Yin Elon, Yin Elder Senior, seemed to be in trouble. My teacher Puhong Master had always been on good terms with Yin Elder Senior, so let me represent him to send his regards." Once he said that, it was what most of the people were thinking. After all, Fun Xiang Valley's actions were strange, especially after such a big incident. Valley Master Yin Elon still did not appear. It was really strange. Everyone echoed. Their gazes gathered on Shang Guansu. Shang Guansu smiled and said, "Actually, I will not hide it from everyone. I just came from Valley Master's residence, Tian Xiangju." Everyone and O sound were immediately heard, resounding together. Shang Guansu waited for the crowd to calm down, stood up, cupped his fist to everyone, smiled and said, "Everyone's concern and good intentions, I have already reported to Valley Master one by one. Yun Valley Master is extremely grateful. It's just that senior brother Yun is indeed in a critical moment of closed-door cultivation and is unable to come out to greet guests. If there's any disrespect, I hope everyone will forgive him." Finished speaking, he cupped his fists with a smile. Li Sun, who was beside him, also stood up and bowed with him. Everyone looked at each other. After a moment, Fa Xiang stood up, with a smile on his face, said, "Since Patron Shangwan has said so, I believe Senior Yun must be in good health. We can rest assured. We are really disturbing you." Shangwan Su and Li Sun said at the same time, "Not at all, not at all." Fa Xiang glanced at Lu Sueki beside him, saw her expressionless, almost like ice, especially her face, almost transparent pale, indistinctly had a trace of desolation. Fa Xiang laughed bitterly in his heart, knew that Lu Sueki would not take the initiative to speak no matter what. He could only help Lu Sueki, said, "Senior Yun is in good health. That's the best." Also, just now, Li Sun Senior Brother said that this time, there seemed to be evil people taking advantage of the chaos to cause mischief. Not sure if there's anything we can help with? Shangwan upon her for a while, said, evil people are crafty and full of tricks, love to hit people when they are down, taking advantage of the natural disaster to secretly attack our valley. Really hateful. Just that luckily our defense is tight and chase them out of the valley, although this matter cannot be left at that. But right now, we are unable to find them. Funxiang Valley had sent out many disciples. Until today, other than some small figures, only Li Sun teacher nephew and Lu Sueki Miss Lu managed to track down evil sect He Huan, sect Jean Pinger, but unfortunately she escaped again. Now we don't know how to investigate. Fa Xiang frowned. The rest of them were also speechless, and the evil sect was now flourishing. Jean Pinger was even more famous for being a ruthless woman. Some of the low-skilled good faction people might not want to provoke her. And here at Funxiang Valley, because of various reasons, actually did not wish for other sects to interfere. Immediately Shangwan signaled Li Sun with his eyes. Li Sun understood, stepped forward, cupped his fists, and said, "Here I thank everyone for your good intentions, but Funxiang Valley will try our best. Although it will take some time, we will also investigate this matter. so let's not trouble everyone. Wait! Suddenly, a cold voice was heard beside him. Everyone was startled, looked back. It was that cold lady, Lu Sweki, who had been silent all along. This aloof lady in the eyes of the world, her face was as cold as frost, just that in her eyes, right now indistinctly had a faint glimmer, not knowing what exactly she was thinking. Those evil sect evildoers, her voice, reverberated in everyone's ears, most likely went to a place called 7 Mile Cave. The others immediately started to discuss. Only Li Sun's body shook. His eyes looking at Lu Sweki immediately had a strange expression. Last night when we were fighting with those evil sect evildoers, me and Li Sun's senior brother heard the evil lady Jean ping her to. Her voice paused for a moment and then returned to normal, said, to evil sect, ghost king sect, ghostly. 3 words, 7 Mile Cave. Shangguan Su frowned, glanced at Li Sun. This news, for some reason, Li Sun did not tell him. In the Great Hall, everyone's eyes landed on the Funxiang Valley people. Shangguan Su's thoughts turned and then smiled and said, didn't expect Miss Lu to have some clues. Since it is so, Humble Valley will immediately send someone over to investigate. As for everyone, actually it is not necessary to go. After all, this is the southern border. Everyone is only here to greet our Valley Master. So everyone's intentions, Humble Valley appreciates. Everyone agreed in unison. Li Sun and the crowd's voices quietly stood behind Shangguan Su, looked at Lu Sweki. Last night he was tracking Jean Pinger. Firstly, Jean Pinger's skills were not lower than his. Secondly, Jean Pinger had always been crafty. After a series of schemes, she finally got rid of him. In his anger, he remembered that Lu Sweki was still in that Tianshui stockade, confronting evil sect, Ghost King sect, ghostly, and quickly rushed back. Unexpectedly, on the way, he met Anan Sweki, who was returning on a sword. When they met, he could not help but be shocked. At that time, Anan Sweki seemed to have lost his soul. His face was pale, without a trace of blood. His white clothes were also speckled with dark red, which were the traces of blood. In his panic, he repeatedly shouted, which seemed to call Lu Sweki back from her strange emotions. But she only looked at him silently for a while and went straight back to Funxiang Valley. This cold girl, and that ghostly who was once her fellow disciple. What actually happened in the deserted Tianshui stronghold? Was it a fight? Was it a conversation? For some reason, once Li Sun thought of that, an inexplicable rage surged in his heart. His expression changed along with his thoughts, and these did not escape Shangguan Su and Fa Xiang's eyes. Just that these two did not say a word, with smiles on their faces, chatting merrily. Finally, the other sects decided to return. And because of their close relationship with Funxiang Valley, and this information was provided by Lu Sweki and Fa Xiang both stay behind, with Funxiang Valley people heading to 7 Mile Cave to take a good look. And almost at the same time, Ghostly and Xiao Bai with Xiao Hui appeared in front of Matu Mountain. Looking at this tall mountain shaped like a horse's head, Xiao Bai smiled sweetly, said, it is said that there is a deep cave on this mountain. In the cave, the dog deity, which the Miao people worship, lives in. At the foot of this mountain, there is a narrow mountain path, only allowing one person to walk. After walking in, it is the 7 Mile Cave where the Miao people live. Ghostly expressionlessly glanced at the tall mountain in front of him, did not speak a word, and quietly walked forward. From last night until now, he did not even speak a word. Xiao Bai stood behind, watching his back figure. A faint smile revealed on her lips. She turned and patted Xiao Hui, who was crouching on her shoulder, smiled and said, then let's go. Xiao Hui called out twice, grinned, and suddenly jumped down from her shoulder, ran forward in 2 or 3 steps, with a sound scurried up to Ghostly's shoulder and sat down, turned back and beckoned to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai shook her head slightly, smiled lightly, and followed. Chapter 232. Walking into the narrow mountain path, twisting and turning, on both sides of the solid stone walls, rocks would occasionally pierce out. If one was not careful, one's head might hit on it. And looking at the surroundings of the stone walls, many places still had water droplets dripping down. The place with the most water droplets even gathered into a small pool. Above and below the stone walls, in the dark places, there were quite a number of greenish stone moss, making the air filled with a slightly damp and cold smell. Ghostly and Shao, by after many twists and turns, with great difficulty, they turned out of this unknown number of years old mountain path, once again saw the daylight. This day, the sun had just risen, a departure from the gloomy weather a few days ago. It seemed rather sunny. They had just walked out from the gloomy mountain path, under the sunlight. Ghostly and Shao could not help but squint their eyes, feeling the sunlight shining down from the sky, as if carrying a beautiful halo shining on them. After a moment, when their eyes adapted, the bustling noises from afar also gradually traveled over. The two of them looked forward and saw that the view before them suddenly became clear. Surrounded by mountains, there was a fertile, flat, and open land in front of them. One by one, houses with a strong meow flavor rose from the ground, either built against the mountains or closely connected. There was also a small, clear stream that originated from the deep mountains in front of them. It flowed through this paradise-like land of land. Quite a number of meow houses were built on both sides of the stream. And above the water, looking from afar, the meow people had built 3 bridges. All of them were different. One was a wooden bridge, the simplest 2 huge logs tied together and laid horizontally on both sides. It was considered a bridge. As for the other 2, they were both stone bridges, but they had more flavor. One was built with huge rocks, rough and solid, laid horizontally across the narrow stream, and then using heavy stone slabs to support it. It became a bridge. It was the simple and practical way of building a bridge in the southern border. However, the last stone bridge was made of small stones. Moreover, there were no piers. It was an arch bridge. Every stone was tightly connected to each other. It crossed the air and flew over the stream. It looked completely like a bridge from the Central Plains. It was really strange that it would appear here. Ghostly saw all of this. His heart was moved, but he did not show it on his face. He and Shao continued to walk forward. The crowd gradually increased, and it became more and more lively. Most of the people around were speaking in meow language. Ghostly only felt that it was gibberish and could not understand a single word even after half a day. Shao walked beside him, looked around. Many of the meow people around them looked at them. Because they were unfamiliar faces, they took a few more glances, but there was no special hostility. After a few steps, she quietly said to Ghostly, "Seems like the southern border has become much more peaceful these few years." Ghostly was surprised, did not understand, said, "What is it?" Shao said, "When I came here that year, when the ordinary meow people saw outsiders, each and every one of them looked like they were facing a great enemy. Their eyes were even more on guard. At that time, the competition between the 5 tribes was fierce and cruel. Fights between the tribes were not uncommon. If outsiders dared to come to the 7-mile cave and did not have any self-defense skills, they would most likely be in danger. But looking at today's situation, I'm afraid there have been fewer fights in the past few years." Ghostly nodded slightly, looked ahead. Right now, they were already walking in the middle of the meow people. This main road was on one side of the stream. On one side were many meow houses that were closely linked together. On the other side was the clear river water, and on the bank were many rows of green trees. At a glance, the meow houses were mostly built with wood. The style was completely different from the Central Plains, squarish, simple and unadorned, and savage animal bones were hung at the house corners. The more ferocious the beast, the more common it was. Most likely this was the meow people's custom, to display the bravery of the house owners. Both sides of the road had meow people setting up stalls to sell, but most of the things sold were wild beast fur, raw meat. After a few more steps, they saw 1 or 2 stalls selling small jewelry and jade wares and other playthings. Xiaobai smiled and said, "The fur here are all top-quality goods, and the prices are very cheap. If you want, you can buy a few here. It will be very worth it." Ghostly's lips moved, but he did not say a word, walked straight ahead. He slowly walked to the riverbank and looked down. The river water was extremely clear. Standing on the riverbank, he could see the rocks under the water. The number of big and small fishes swimming and playing in the water was even more uncountable. From afar, there seemed to be birds flying past, flapping their wings and landing on the water surface. raised their heads to look around, and then leisurely folded their wings and swam lightly on the water surface. Heaven and earth living things, in this place, were strangely harmonious. Xiaobai slowly walked over. Xiao Hui, who had unknowingly ran, backed her shoulder, curiously peeked its head out, and peered down the stream. "What do we do now?" Ghostly indifferently said. Xiaobai pondered for a while and said, "No matter what, it has already been 300 years. If that person did not have our level of cultivation, most likely he would have passed away. We better first find the place where that person was." Ghostly silently nodded, said, "Where is he?" Xiaobai smiled, pointed to the front, and said, "Over there." Ghostly looked up and was suddenly stunned. The place where Xiaobai was pointing was deep in the Miao settlement, a stone platform building built halfway up the mountain, far taller than the ordinary Miao houses. Ghostly frowned, quietly said, "Altar." Xiaobai smiled and said, "That's right." Ghostly was silent, but his heart was burning with anxiety, not because of anything else, but the altar in the southern border region had a special significance. He had been to the southern border many times in the past, although because he was preoccupied with other matters and wholeheartedly searching for the mysterious black shaman tribe and did not pay much attention to the southern border customs, but some basic things he still knew. In the southern borderlands, Zhuang, Miao, Tu, Li, and Gao mountain 5 tribes, governed according to their territories, or because the tribes were different. They each believed in different deities and religions, but among the tribes, there was a place specially for worshiping their deities and ancestors, which was the altar. The altar in the southern border region had a lofty position in the eyes of most of the tribes. Most of the time, what the shaman in the altar said in the great mysterious deity's words was no different. In the past, when the battle between the 5 tribes was at its fiercest, every time there was a war, they had to first consult the wizard in the altar, explain the situation to the gods, and get permission from the gods, that is, the great wizard. Only then could the tribe leaders start a new war. From this, it could be seen the altar and the shaman in it. What kind of position did they have in the southern border? And these shaman, as far as he knew, rarely received outsiders. Ghostly was silent for a moment, turned to Xiaobai, and said, "That is the Miao people's altar, the person you're talking about. Don't tell me." Xiaobai smiled faintly, cut him off, and said, "That's right, 300 years ago, what I saw here was the Miao tribe's great shaman, using the soul return great skill, rescued a Miao person who had 1 soul and 3 spirits taken away by the mountain spirit. Miao people's great shaman." Ghost Li's lips twitched again. If the shaman in the altar was said to have a lofty position in the southern border tribes, then as the shaman with the strongest power, the highest position, every time personally conveying the deity's decree, the great shaman was simply the deity in the eyes of the ordinary people. If anyone dared to offend the great shaman, Ghostly did not doubt that all of the Miao people in this land, even all of the Miao people in the entire southern border, would rush over to fight with him. Xiaobai looked at Ghostly with interest, smiled, and said, "So what do we do now?" Ghostly glanced at her, saw the rising morning sunlight falling on her face, as if refracted out, carrying a faint warmth. He did not speak a word, turned and walked toward the altar halfway up the mountain, unhurriedly. Xiaobai smiled and followed. This place was called 7 Mile Cave. Naturally, the area was rather large, and it was also known as the largest Miao settlement in the southern border. As they went deeper in, they saw more and more Miao people. From the larger path that they were walking on, small paths continuously branched out to the side, like a big tree spreading its branches and leaves. Looking from afar, the 2 of them could see that the path under their feet directly extended towards the altar in the distance. Thus, it saved them the trouble of asking for information. Just that as they gradually went deeper, the number of Miao people who noticed their actions increased. Whispers rose and fell around them. About half the time it took to drink a cup of tea, they reached the foot of the tall mountain where the altar was. Then they stopped, not because they hesitated, but because the Miao soldiers stationed at the foot of the mountain stopped them. Chapter 233. Ghostly felt slightly agitated, but the situation before him was not out of his expectations. Actually, as the Miao people's supreme sacred altar, if it was not heavily guarded, it would instead be strange. There were quite a number of Meow soldiers guarding the foot of the mountain. At a glance, there were at least 10 able-bodied men, either near or far, standing guard on the path leading up to the mountainside. Right now, the ones who stopped the two of them were the two Meow men standing at the front. They were dressed in ordinary Meow clothing. The only difference was that there was an additional tough wooden armor made from wrought tan on their chest. Their hands holding long pointed spears. Seemed like this was the difference between the Meow soldiers and the ordinary Meow people. The two Meow men assessed Ghostly and Xiao Bai from top to bottom. Then their gazes lingered on Xiao Bai's pretty face for a moment, and then loudly said, "Jili ji li hu lu lu. Hua la lu 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 hu." Ghostly turned and looked at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai shrugged her shoulders and said, "Don't ask me. After being locked up for so long, how would I still remember these local words?" Ghostly was silent, turned his head, pondered for a moment, said, "We have an urgent matter. Wish to pay a visit to your great shaman." Because he had a favor to ask, it was rare for him to speak right now, with some politeness. But very obviously, this Meow settlement was not as civilized as the innkeeper and waiter at the Tianshui stockade, proficient in the Central Plains language. Hearing Ghost Li's words, the two Meow men instead frowned even more, looked at each other, and even raised the long-pointed spears in their hands. Their faces solemn, loudly asked, "Hu lu 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 hua la, lu lu hu hu ji li li." Ghostly was speechless, for the moment did not know what to do. Honestly speaking, for Bai Yao, he had been running around for 10 years, searching for the Black Shaman tribe. Now that he finally had some clues, it was blocked by these Meow soldiers. He felt extremely agitated, really wanted to strike out and overturn these people, charge into the altar, and find that whatever great shaman, let him treat Bai Yao. Just that he was after all no longer the ignorant youth, knew that right now he must not be impulsive. If not, once the situation became awkward, it would have the opposite effect. But after a moment of hesitation, because of the language barrier, he pointed to the altar located halfway up the mountain and said in a friendly voice, "We want to go up your altar and pay our respects to the great shaman." He did not know if the Meow people understood what he said, but his action of pointing to that altar halfway up the mountain immediately made all the surrounding Meow people, including the Meow soldiers standing further away, and some Meow people who were following behind them to watch the commotion, all of them immediately shouted and scolded loudly. The Meow soldiers even more clamored over, surrounding them. Ghostly was stunned for a moment. Xiao Bai quietly said, "Oh no, you might have offended the Meow people's big taboo." Ghostly curiously asked, "What did I do?" Xiao Bai looked at the angry crowd around her, quietly said, "In the Meow people's eyes, the altar is a sacred and inviolable place. It cannot be easily mentioned in normal words. Using one's finger to point at the altar is an extremely disrespectful act. To the Meow people, it is the biggest humiliating action." Ghostly glared at her, angrily said, "Such an important matter. You actually didn't tell me earlier?" Xiao Bai laughed lightly. A faint tenderness seemed to be revealed, gently said, "You also have to think I've already been in prison for 300 years. How would I still remember so much?" Ghostly was speechless again. For a moment, he really felt his head swelling. The surrounding Meow people saw that they were besieged, but did not show any fear. Instead, their expressions were composed as they conversed quietly. That man still had some anxiety, but that woman did not seem to care about the Meow people around her, smiling sweetly, looking around. There were many Meow women around, looking at Xiao Bai's beauty. For a moment, they were all secretly envious, but when they saw even more Meow men looking at Xiao Bai with glinting eyes, immediately there was an uproar. In a short moment, voices rose and fell. This pair of adulterous couple had insulted the sacred altar. The crime was unforgivable. They should be hacked into 1,000 pieces, sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts. A few young men among them could not help but argue a few words, said that the one who insulted the altar was that man. This woman did not do anything wrong. Why not kill that man and leave that woman? It would not be bad for her to be my wife, etc. Before they could finish, these few men were immediately drowned in the crowd of Meow women, their mothers, sisters, aunties, third aunties, sixth aunties, and even the Meow women whom they did not know or did not know were either hitting or kicking or pulling their hair, or grabbing their ears, or punching their eyes, or hitting their chests. Anyway, hands and feet were all over the place. Immediately wailing and howling were heard. The next moment, sounds of splashing were heard. These men were thrown into the stream with bruised faces, splashing up a large amount of water. The valiance of the Meow women could be seen. Those Meow soldiers did not expect that these Meow women would be so furious. They were even more furious than the warriors who were only qualified to guard the altar because they had to be the most loyal to the deities. They were so disgusted with the outsiders who had insulted the altar to the extent that any slightest pleading would result in them being beaten up. That Meow soldier in the lead seemed to be the leader of these several soldiers. He glanced at the few young men who were still wailing in the river, coughed once, and looked at Ghostly and Xiao Bai. Immediately his face turned frosty, and he did not even look at Xiao Bai, stared unwaveringly at Ghostly, as if afraid that the man would slip away or afraid that his own eyes would slip away. Unavoidably, he could not explain clearly, loudly, angrily said, "Ha ha lu lu ji li li, huala ji li hu lu." Lu. Ghostly was also very anxious, although he did not know why a large group of Meow women suddenly dashed together in the crowd, grabbed a few young Meow men, and beat them up before throwing them into the river, but thinking that the Meow people were a different tribe. Most likely they had some strange customs, and so he was not surprised. But right now he could not communicate with these Meow people, and just now he had unintentionally offended the Meow people's taboo, enraged the Meow people. Watching more and more Meow people gathered around. Although he and Xiao Bai were both cultivators and were not afraid of these Meow people because of their large numbers, tall and strong bodies, but helplessly he really had a favor to ask from this Meow tribe. In these 10 years, from hope to disappointment, and then to almost despair, it was really agonizing. Now that there was suddenly such a good hope reignited, no matter what, he would not easily let it go. But right now he could not communicate with them, and if he continued to make gestures, he was afraid that it would not be easy to communicate. If he inexplicably offended some Meow people taboo again, unavoidably it would be too unjust. He stood there. He could not force his way in, and was even more unwilling to retreat, caught in a dilemma. It was really awkward. And the surrounding Meow people saw that the two of them did not repent even after their mistake, still stood at the same spot and did not make a sound. That man still looked anxious, but that woman smiled even more brilliantly, seemed to be even happier under the crowd's gaze. Her smile became even more enchanting, and even smiled at the few Meow men who were staring at her. Immediately those men were bewitched till they were dizzy. This scene fell into the eyes of the surrounding Meow women. Immediately, like a pot exploding, it was really intolerable. The clamor became louder and louder, almost drowning Ghostly and Xiao Bai with their saliva. The crowd was about to go out of control. The Meow women were about to charge forward and teach that coquettish little demoness a good lesson, using the name of the deity on the altar to vent their resentment. A loud shout was heard from behind those soldiers guarding the mountain path. The voice was deep and majestic. It actually suppressed the clamor of many people, and the voice was filled with majesty. The surrounding Meow people seemed to recognize this voice, immediately quietened down, and looked up the mountain. Evidently, this person had high prestige among the Meow people. Chapter 234. A group of Meow people walked down from the mountain. Ghostly and Xiao Bai looked over and saw 7 or 8 strong Meow warriors escorting an elderly who looked to be in his early 50s walking down. That loud shout just now was made by this elderly. The surrounding Meow warriors all bowed. The agitated crowd immediately quieted down. Everyone bowed their heads, expressing respect to this elderly. When this group of people came near, that elderly walked out from the crowd, came before Ghostly and Xiao Bai, looked at them. Ghostly and Xiao Bai were also sizing him up at the same time. This old man was quite tall. Although he was old and there were white hairs on his temples, his spirit was still very strong. His eyes were bright and full of expression. At this moment, he was frowning and carefully sizing up the two of them. Then, that elderly said, "Ji li hu lu lu, huala lu 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 hu." Ghostly was surprised. The words seemed to be similar to what the soldier asked just now, Most likely it was the same meaning, should be asking what was his identity, and what was he doing here? Just that he could only guess, but he still could not understand the meaning in his words. He could only say, "We have an urgent matter, want to..." He was about to raise his hand when he suddenly realized and quickly put his hand down, said, "Want to pay respects to the great shaman in the altar." When he said that, he was actually feeling vexed. These meow people could not understand the meaning in his words. What was the use even if he said it? But if he did not say, it would be even more impolite. Most likely he would infuriate these meow people. For the moment, he was extremely anxious. Unexpectedly, the heavens seemed to be complying with his wishes. The elderly heard Ghost Lee's words, suddenly frowned, and carefully assessed the two of them. Suddenly, using half-baked Central Plains language, said, You are Central Plains people?" Ghost Lee and Xiao Bai were surprised, and then overjoyed. Right now, the most pleasant voice in the world. Most likely this elderly's full of rustic language. Ghost Lee quickly nodded and said, That's right. We are from Central Plains, have an urgent matter, and want to pay respects to your noble tribe's great shaman." That old man took a look at them and saw that they were wearing the ethnic clothing of the southern border, but the material looked coarse. But these two people had an extraordinary bearing. Obviously, they were not ordinary merchants, especially that girl. She was born beautiful. Even this set of clothes that ordinary meow women would not be interested in, on her, it actually had a unique style. "Who are you people? Why are you looking for the great shaman?" The old man said slowly. Ghost Lee and Xiao Bai looked at each other, cupped his hands together, and said, "This. Elder, I have a friend because of serious injury. 9 out of 10 of his 3 souls and 7 spirits were dispersed. Only 1 remaining soul. 10 years like a fake dead person, really?" Speaking till here, in his mind, Bai Yao's figure still lying in the cold stone room in majestic Fox Mountain appeared. For a moment his emotions were stirred. His voice actually trembled. Although most of the meow people around did not understand what he was saying, but looking at his expression and listening to his tone, most likely they knew what he was pleading for and for a moment had a favorable impression of this person. As for Xiao Bai, she stood beside Ghost Lee and looked at him with her bright eyes. At this moment, the faint smile that had been hanging on the corner of her mouth, as if she had seen through the world's affairs, was withdrawn and became solemn. Ghost Lee composed himself, and said, "I once heard an expert's advice. This kind of illness, definitely needs a person who knows the soul return strange art, using the remnant soul as the basis to cast the strange art, to call back the dispersed soul. Only then it can be healed. I have been searching bitterly for 10 years, helpless in this vast world. I actually could not find it. Luckily recently," he glanced at Xiao Bai and continued, "Luckily recently I heard that your tribe's great shaman has such soul return strange art, and so specially came to plead, asking the great shaman to help. I am really extremely grateful." After that old man heard it, his brows frowned tightly, his expression complicated, but looking at Ghost Lee's sincere expression, he really did not look like he was lying. After a moment of silence, said, "It is rare that you Central Plains people still have such camaraderie, but I cannot make the decision on this matter. All of you wait here for a while. I will go up to the altar to ask the great shaman, see what he thinks. If he is not willing to see all of you, I also can't do anything." Ghost Lee was overjoyed, nodded his head repeatedly, and said, "Many thanks, sir." That old man nodded his head. After hesitating for a moment, turned his head and spoke a few words to the meow warriors beside him. The few warriors nodded at the same time. After which the meow old man walked up the mountain alone. The remaining meow warriors slowly gathered, their eyes watching Ghost Lee and Xiao Bai, not knowing if they were monitoring them, or if they were under orders to protect them. As for the other meow people who were watching, they only saw the elderly speaking gibberish with these two outsiders. In their ears, the Central Plains language was also a mess of bird language, and then instructed a few warriors to watch over them. He himself returned to the altar on a mountain. For a moment discussions were rife, whispering to each other. Under so many pairs of eyes, Ghost Lee's mind was preoccupied. He had his own thoughts, and did not notice the other meow people at all. Xiao Bai instead still revealed a gentle smile, slowly looked around, attracting innumerable lustful or jealous or resentful gazes. Only Xiao Hui on her shoulder peered around. not interested in these people, and finally its gaze landed on that stream beside, highly interested in the fishes swimming in it, watching intently, grinning from time to time. Its body was also itching to move, looking like it wanted to jump into the stream to play. The Meow People's altar was entirely built with huge rocks, in the majestic and tall. It carried a trace of roughness and unsophisticated. That old man walked up from the mountain path, came before the altar. A platform was seen in front of the altar, leveled out with rectangular huge rocks, extremely flat. Behind the platform was where the altar was. 2. A huge stone pillar, erected high up in front of the altar. At a glance, most likely it was at least 10 zhongs high, and there was not a single crack on the stone pillar. It was actually a whole piece of huge rock. Not knowing where the Meow ancestors were able to find such huge rocks and actually be able to move them and erect them in front of the altar. Walking past the 2 huge stone pillars, it was the altar built with rocks. The 7-mile Cave Meow altar had always enjoyed a great reputation in the southern border. Half of it was built with huge rocks. The other half was directly chiseled into the mountain, dug out from the solid rock walls. The old man walked in. Immediately, the surrounding lights dimmed. The surrounding temperature seemed to be much lower than outside. That old man obviously had a high status and was very familiar with this sacred place in the Meow People's hearts. Without any hesitation, he walked straight into the depths of the altar. Occasionally, a Meow shaman would appear along the way. Both parties would greet each other. If Ghost Li and Xiao Bai saw it, most likely they would be able to guess this old man's identity. To be able to make a Meow shaman, other than the other shamans in the altar, it could only be the entire Meow tribe leader. The old man continued to walked past the spacious passageway, and came to the deepest part of the altar, which was also the largest room in the altar. On the stone door hung decorations made from ferocious beast bones. On the surrounding stone walls, bright red blood was smeared everywhere, symbolizing the piety of offering sacrifices to the ancestors. Looking from the darkness, everything here looked exceptionally sinister. But to the Meow people, this was the most sacred place. A solemn expression appeared on the old man's face. He tidied his clothes and slowly walked in. In a huge stone room, it was empty. Only at the innermost a ball of fire was burning. It looked especially eye-catching in the darkness. In front of the fire was a strange stone statue carved from the same huge stone. Its head was a dog shape, but its body was fully grown. Its feet had sharp claws, and there were 2 pairs of wings on its back. It was really a strange statue. Looked like it was the deity that the Meow people worshipped. And in the huge stone room, there was only one person. His back looked very old and stooped, quietly sitting in front of the fire, as if meditating and also as silent. This strange place, for some reason, gave one a strange feeling of stopping time, not moving forward. Here, everything seemed to be quiet and silent. The fire blazed, illuminating the figure of the person in front of the fire, making it bright and dark. The old man unhurriedly walked up, stopped 1 zhang behind that person, spoke respectfully in a low voice, "Great shaman." The figure sitting in front of the fire moved. An old voice was heard. "Tu Ma Gu, why are you back again? Haven't I already told you the dog deity's decree? Don't tell me you still have some doubts?" This old man, whom he addressed as Tu Ma Gu, was the current southern border Meow tribe leader. He was heard respectfully saying, "Great shaman, I completely understand the dog deity's intention. I will definitely act according to the dog deity's decree." The great shaman still did not turn his head. He was heard saying, "Oh, that's good. But what is it that made you turn back? I feel that you are feeling uneasy." Tu Ma Gu frowned slightly, seemed to be hesitating on what words to use to explain. After a moment, he still decided to speak directly. "Great shaman, 2 unfamiliar Central Plains people have arrived at the 7-mile cave. They wish to pay their respects to the great shaman." The great shaman in front of the fire moved. The dog deity statue's head, which was facing the fire, also turned slightly, but only his completely white sparse hair could be seen. "Who is it? I have not walked out of this altar for almost 100 years. Why would there be Central Plains people coming to look for me?" Tu Ma Gu said, "Yes, I also find it very strange, so I came up to ask the great shaman. Should I let them come up?" The great shaman was silent for a moment, said, "Did they say what they want?" Tumagu said, "Yes, a man and a woman came. The man said he wishes to invite the great shaman to treat a friend of his." The great shaman snorted, said, "I want to serve the dog deity. I have no time to bother with these people. Help me to reject them." Tumagu was stunned for a moment, but did not say much, said, "All right, then I will go and convey your wishes." After speaking, he turned and walked out. Just that he had only walked a few steps. Suddenly the great shaman's voice was heard from behind. "Wait." Tumagu turned around and said, "Why? Is there anything else, great shaman?" The great shaman's hunched figure was still facing the fire, but his aged voice was heard slowly. "The illness they requested me to treat. What is it?" Tumagu said, "From what they said, it is a rather strange illness, as if a person's soul is 9 out of 10 gone." The great shaman's figure in the fire suddenly shook. Tumagu continued, "That man said there was once an expert who guided him. This kind of condition must be treated with the soul returned strange art. That man also got the information from somewhere, saying that great shaman, you might have this kind of strange art, so he requested you to treat him." Tumagu slowly finished his words, but the great shaman did not have any reaction. His figure did not move, not knowing what he was thinking. The fire continued to rise and fall, swallowing the firewood in the fire. Tumagu waited for a long time, but the great shaman still did not speak. He then hesitantly said, "Great shaman, then I will go and reject them. Ask them to leave immediately." The great shaman was still silent, did not say a word. Tumagu slowly turned and walked out, but just when he was about to leave the stone chamber, the great shaman's voice was heard again. This time, even he could hear, the great shaman, who had always been mysterious and wise, seemed to have gone through a long and complicated contemplation before he slowly spoke. "You, bring them up." Ghostly could not help but clenched his fists tightly and then slowly opened them. He suddenly realized his palms were sweating because of his anxiety. How long had it been since he was this agitated and yearning? With an increasing uneasiness, Ghostly kept gazing towards the altar halfway up the mountain. But that elder, after a long time, still had not returned. Could it be that great shaman in the altar was not willing to treat outsiders? Or could it be that he had done something wrong again? Ghostly could not help but think so. Even his heart started to beat faster. Xiaobai beside, her eyes landed on Ghostly's face. Looking at this man whose eyes could not conceal his anxiety, that indistinct deep affection seemed to be carved on his face. She sighed softly, turned her head away. The surrounding Miao onlookers were not as many as before. After waiting for such a long time, the tribe leader entered the altar, but still did not come down, and also did not give any orders on how to deal with the two outsiders. A considerable number of people had dispersed. But because Xiao Bai's appearance was too beautiful, it still attracted many young Miao men to stand nearby. While looking at her boldly, they chatted and laughed loudly, most likely talking about her beauty. As for the monkey Xiao Hui, it had already jumped down from Xiao Bai's shoulder, ran to the riverside and crouched beside the clear stream, watching the fishes swimming between the rocks and the water, suddenly pounced down, wanted to catch the fishes. Chapter 235. Unexpectedly, the fishes were cunning and slippery, swam left and right, escaped from its hand, and splashed water all over itself. But Xiaohui did not care, retracted its hand and waited patiently. After a while, the water's surface calmed down, those fishes swam back again. Xiaohui saw the opportunity and pounced down again. Repeating the cycle, Xiaohui was very interested in this game and would never tire of it. At the foot of the mountain, the crowd gradually dispersed. The surroundings regained its tranquility. Tumagu still had not returned. Ghostly was getting more and more anxious. There were a few times when he really wanted to charge up like that, barge into the altar and capture that great shaman to beg properly. But every time he thought of Baiyu, he eventually still forcibly suppressed that thought. The taste of waiting was actually this torturous. The anxiety on his face gradually became obvious, other than Xiao Bai. Right now, the other Miao warriors also saw it. Looked at each other, these Miao warriors were actually also feeling very puzzled. It was just a question. Why would it take such a long time? Could it be that the tribe leader and the great shaman still have other important matters? The Meow people were rough and unsophisticated, although they did not understand Ghostly and the rest's identity, but to make these two people wait here for such a long time. These Meow people also felt embarrassed. After a while, that tall little leader walked up, with a rough voice said to Ghostly, "Hululu, hualala." Ghostly was surprised, did not understand what it meant. That Meow warrior untied a big bag sewn from his waist and threw it over to him. Ghostly caught it. It sank in his hand. There was a wooden cork at the mouth of the bag, and then looked at that Meow warrior's hand to his mouth, making a drinking gesture. Ghostly seemed to understand, pulled out the cork and sniffed, as expected, the strong smell of alcohol. It was a bag of strong liquor. Ghostly gave a bitter laugh. He originally did not like liquor, and right now, he was even less in a mood, but those Meow people were staring at him. He thought that it was not good to let their good intentions go to waste. He nodded and smiled to that Meow warrior, placed the wine bag to his mouth, and forced himself to drink a mouthful. Unexpectedly, once it entered his mouth, he frowned immediately. The wine brewed by the Meow people was extremely strong. The taste even carried this southern border strength of character. There was a numbing and spicy taste. When it entered his throat, he was caught off guard and even felt uncomfortable. His expression was seen by those Meow people. The several Meow people could not help but laughed out loud. Most likely it was not the first time they saw the Central Plains people's unaccustomed expression after drinking this Meow fermented liquor. Their laughter also contained some pride. Ghostly was infuriated, but then he recalled that these people actually did not have any ill intentions, and he was asking for help. How could he lose his temper? He could only laugh bitterly, and was about to return the wine bag. That Meow warrior laughed and stretched out his hand to take it. Suddenly, a fair hand stretched out from the side, took the big bag of wine from Ghostly's hand. Everyone, including Ghostly, was stunned. The one who received the wine bag was actually Xiao, who was standing beside. She picked up the wine bag and placed it to her nose, inhaled deeply. The strong smell of the liquor hit her face, but this girl did not seem to feel any discomfort. Instead, she looked intoxicated. Following which, she raised both her hands and placed the wine bag to her mouth, started to drink in big mouthfuls. Everyone was shocked. Ghostly was also taken aback. Xiaobai took a big mouthful and then put down the wine bag. Her face gradually revealed a satisfied expression. After a long while, she softly exclaimed, "Good wine! Wah!" This cry was made by that group of Meow warriors. The southern border Meow strong liquor. The alcohol had always been ferocious. In this region, there had always been a saying that the strongest man was also the one with the highest alcohol tolerance. In the Meow tribe, women normally would not touch this kind of strong liquor that only men drank. Unexpectedly today, this gentle and charming girl unexpectedly drank this strong liquor in big mouthfuls, and looking at her reaction after drinking, it was a special expression that only experienced drunkards would have. The Meow men were all good drinkers, immediately were moved, one after another cheered. Xiao Bai's fair face, right now, because of the strong wine entering her throat, was covered with a faint blush, but she suddenly perked up, her right hand holding the wine bag, her left hand released, using her slender fingers to lightly snap at the group of Meow warriors, emitting a thin sound. The group of Meow warriors was in an uproar again. Each and every one of them looked surprised and amused. This gesture was clearly the southern border Meow people. When the men toasted and competed with each other, this Central Plains girl actually did it perfectly. For a moment, they looked at each other. But what was even more impressive, what made them stare blankly, was still behind. Xiao Bai laughed softly, her gaze right now really gentle and charming like water. Raising her head, her hair fluttering, she placed the wine bag to her mouth and gulped it down in big mouthfuls. The Meow people turned pale with fright. Not only did Ghostly not understand what was going on, he only secretly blamed Xiao Bai for doing this at this moment. But in the Meow people's eyes, this girl right now was almost the world's #1 extraordinary girl. The Meow liquor was extremely strong. Such a big bag of strong liquor. In the entire Meow tribe, not a single man could finish it in one breath. Most of them would be dead drunk after drinking 3/4 of it. But looking at this girl's throat moving nonstop, drinking in big mouthfuls, for a moment the Meow Men were all moved. And it just so happened, Xiao Bai had made that extremely classic gesture. The Meow people were, after all, upright, and when so many men were facing a weak-looking girl's challenge, how would they have the slightest shrunk back? Not sure who was the first to shout, threw the long spear in his hand onto the ground, untied the wine bag hanging at his waist, raised his head, and drank. The Meow people's custom, normally every man would have a wine bag by his side. Once this started, immediately like a pot exploding, the Meow people all threw their spears and drank. The scene was really spectacular. Only that Meow little leader suddenly came to his senses, stretched his hand to his waist to take the wine bag, but unexpectedly it was empty. He then realized that the wine bag was already in Xiao Bai's hands. Seeing that the surrounding men were all drinking, the Meow leader's face turned red with anxiety. If he did not drink now, it would be hard to guarantee that he would go down in infamy for 10,000 years. His eyes turned. An idea came to his mind. The Meow leader, with a swoosh, scurried to a Meow soldier near the river, abruptly stretched out his hand and snatched the wine bag from his hand, placed it to his mouth, and started drinking. That soldier was immediately enraged. As the saying goes, a soldier can be killed, but wine must never be refused. With a loud roar, he was about to snatch the wine, but unexpectedly the Meow leader was already prepared and suddenly kicked him. Immediately he was kicked into the river. With a loud splash, Xiao Hui, who was playing by the riverbank, was startled and jumped in fright. The soldier was extremely aggrieved, and this matter concerned his face. How could he let it go? He scrambled to the riverside, and upon seeing that he might not be able to snatch the wine from that Meow leader, he angrily stamped his feet and ran away with big strides, dashed into a house nearby. The next moment, amidst the exclamations, this person actually snatched a big bag of strong wine out. With a swoosh, he stood together with the other Meow comrades, gulped it down in big mouthfuls. Ghostly was dumbstruck. For a moment, he forgot about the altar on the mountainside. A large group of Meow men on one side. The other side was a delicate girl, both sides drinking like crazy. Although this scene was spectacular, but it was really comical, making one sweat. Right now, this scene was too spectacular. Immediately attracted the other Meow people. In an instant, the news was spread out. The Meow people's sharp voices rose and fell. A large crowd gathered, at least 3 times more than the crowd just now. The peddlers abandoned their stalls. The hunters threw away their prey. The people in the houses all ran out, surrounding this place so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. It was really a sea of people. Shouts and screams were heard from the crowd. Most likely, it was the people's excited shouts and cheers. In the middle of the field, the drinking contest between both sides had already reached the critical moment. The Meow people's strong wine. How could it be ordinary? Even the Meow soldiers who often drank. Right now, there were already people slowly falling down. Every time one of them fell down, the crowd immediately made a noise, an uproar, but the excitement filled their faces even more. After a while, more and more Meow men revealed pained expressions, their faces flushed red, unsteady on their feet, unavoidably swaying. Although they still tried their best to support themselves, but under the dizziness, they could only fall down dejectedly. Pa pa pa. The Meow soldiers' alcohol tolerance was not too far apart. A large number of them fell down on the Meow side. Only 3 were left standing, struggling to support themselves. Among them included that Meow soldier leader. And Xiao Bai's side. Everyone's eyes were transfixed. Xiao Bai's eyes seemed to be closed, but not closed. The redness on her face gradually turned thicker, almost as if it seeped out from her fair skin, extremely flirtatious. And her eyes were like water, glistening like it was about to spill out, making one feel enchanted at a glance. Just that her beauty was such. Her alcohol tolerance was even more terrifying. Until now, she still did not show any signs of unsteadiness and was still gulping down the strong wine. The Meow people present, including some women, all of them were people who had a deep understanding of drinking. With one look, they could tell that this lady was not faking. She was really using her alcohol tolerance to challenge this group of Meow men. Other than being amazed and even more awed by Xiao Bai's peerless beauty, one after another cheered loudly. Bam! Bam! Two muffled sounds. Another two Meow soldiers fell down right now. Only that Meow soldier leader was struggling to support himself, but his footsteps were gradually staggering. Clearly he was also at his limit. And Xiao Bai, her face turned redder and redder. Suddenly her body slanted. The crowd immediately exclaimed. Xiao Bai instead slowly put down the wine bag. Heave a long sigh. Her eyes looked like water was about to drip out. The wine increased her charm. She was as beautiful as a flower. Her right hand was still holding the wine bag. Her left hand instead waved to the crowd, said with a sweet smile, "Akisi." The crowd immediately burst into an uproar. Akisi in Meow language meant good wine. This lady's alcohol tolerance was extraordinary. Her looks were even more beautiful, and with such an appropriate shout of good wine. In that instant, the crowd erupted into a warm applause. Xiao Bai tossed her head, seemed to be tipsy. Her footsteps also staggered a little, slowly walked to Ghostly, leaned on his body, and laughed at him. Ghostly was speechless. Xiao Bai closed her eyes. Her head swayed slightly. Suddenly she laughed again, laughed loudly, and said, 300 years. 300 years. She raised her head, raised her hand, drank. That graceful posture of drinking was actually peerlessly beautiful and gentle. Boom! The last Meow person, that leader, finally also fell to the ground, although extremely unwilling, but his face was as red as Xiao Hui's buttocks. He was already powerless. The next moment he lost consciousness and fell into a deep sleep. Someone beside ran over to pick up his wine bag to check. There was still half a bag of strong wine left. His countenance changed and loudly announced to the crowd. The crowd was in an uproar. Evidently, this was already an inconceivable record. But the crowd did not forget. There was still an inconceivable lady, still drinking. Xiao Bai's face, right now, was like red jade. Even her fair neck and the exposed skin on her chest also had a faint red color. Looking at her, right now, she seemed to be unable to stand, but she leaned on Ghost Lee's body, still drinking in big mouthfuls. The crowd, right now, gradually quieted down. The expressions on their faces had already slowly turned from excitement to admiration. Finally, Xiao Bai drank the last mouthful of strong wine, took the wine bag away. Both her eyes seemed to be unable to open. Then she smiled with a blushing face. Her expression languid, casually waved, and threw the huge wine bag away. Immediately, someone ran over to pick up the wine bag to check, and then discovered the wine bag was actually empty. That person was dumbstruck. The next moment, loudly announced to the crowd who were staring at him. The crowd was silent for a long time. Suddenly, deafening screams and shouts were heard. In the hubbub, Ghostly instead felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Xiao Bai's soft, boneless body leaned on him, her face blushing, her bright eyes half opened, her eyes as gentle as water, staring intently at him. "Are you all right?" Ghostly held it in for a long time, then muttered this sentence. Xiao Bai stretched out her hand and grabbed his clothes. Her body paused, as if the alcohol had gone to her head. Her snow-white teeth gently bit her lower lip. Her breathing also gradually became heavier, but the gentleness in her eyes, the smile on her lips, did not change. "You," Xiao Bai's voice, like water was about to drip out, softly said beside Ghost Lee's ear. "Do you like me?" Chapter 236. Ghostly was taken aback, but Xiao Bai's eyes were filled with infinite tenderness, watery, as if about to drip out. Reflecting his own figure, his heart jumped. "You are drunk," Ghostly said. Beads of perspiration appeared on his forehead. Xiao Bai's body right now seemed to be unable to stand. All of her weight was leaning on Ghostly. Her white teeth gently bit her red lips, in a languid and with a trace of tenderness. A low moan from her mouth, as if seducing one's soul. Slowly, she leaned her head on Ghost Lee's shoulder. "You are," this intoxicated, infinitely charming girl softly said. Perhaps because the alcohol was too strong, she gently rubbed her head on Ghost Lee's shoulder. Maybe she was having a headache, just that her voice was still softly whispering beside Ghost Lee's ear. "You, this person, is living too tiring. Do you know? Little fool, Ghostly was alarmed by the last 3 words, little fool, but the words were filled with tenderness and a faint fragrance emanated from the girl's body, lingering. The most amazing thing was that peerless face of hers, lazily leaning on his shoulder, her entire body leaning on him, making one not dare to move, unable to move. If this scene was in Central Plains, most likely it would attract numerous gossips, but the southern border's customs were open. The Meow people did not find it strange. Instead, most of them thought that this was a couple, especially with Xiao Bai's earth-shattering shout. It really shook the Meow village. No one said anything. Only some of the young Meow men who admired Xiao Bai, for the moment, felt depressed. Ghostly was at a loss, at the same time for some reason, recalling the meaning of Xiao Bai's words. The words living too tiring slowly reverberated in his heart. For a moment he was at a loss. At this moment, a few cries were heard beside him. It was Xiao Hui's voice. He then recalled that Xiao Hui had been playing beside him. The drinking competition was too shocking, and he had forgotten about Xiao Hui for a moment. Immediately turned his head to look. Unexpectedly with this look, Ghostly almost choked and could not speak. Xiao Hui had run back from the riverbank, crouched not far from Ghostly and Xiao Bai, its 3 eyes darting around, curiously watching the situation. Right now, the drinking competition had ended. The crowd hurriedly tidied up. The Meow people walked over to help those drunk soldiers up and take care of them. Ghostly was also carrying the half-drunk Xiao Bai, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. And the scene was even more chaotic, not to mention the drunkards lying on the ground in disorder, long-handled spears and other weapons, wrought tan armors, including the big wine bags that the Meow people dropped on the ground after they were drunk, littered all over the ground. Among them, there were a few wine bags that had not been stuffed properly. The liquor slowly flowed out from the bags. The air was filled with a strong alcohol smell. Monkeys were curious by nature. Xiao Hui was a natural spiritual creature. Its curiosity was also 10 times stronger than normal monkeys. While no one was noticing, it sneaked over to the side of a drunk Meow soldier, looked around, and saw that no one was paying attention to them. Carefully picked up the wine bag that had fallen beside the soldier. The smell of strong alcohol immediately surged up. The monkey Xiao Hui took a deep sniff, its 3 eyes turning together, showing a puzzled look. Obviously, it had never come into contact with such things before. It then very carefully sat on the ground. Its monkey head turned and looked around vigilantly, then slowly brought it to its mouth and drank a mouthful. The wine entered the monkey's mouth. Xiao Hui put down the wine bag. The monkey's mouth moved. Suddenly, it was in a joyful state. It actually liked the taste very much, could not help but made sounds of zzz. And at this moment, Ghostly heard the sounds and turned around, upon seeing that even the monkey was drinking. After the shock, this anger was no small matter. He thought to himself that these years were really crazy. Why did all the foxes and monkeys start to drink? Xiao Hui, come over. Ghostly loudly called out. Xiao Hui quivered and looked at Ghostly, saw its master's stern expression. It scratched its head and ran over to Ghostly after putting down the wine bag. But after running a few steps, it suddenly thought of something and actually turned back, running to the drunkard's side, grabbing the remaining half of the wine bag in its hand, dragging it on the ground and running back. Ghostly was infuriated. The Meow people who noticed the monkey situation all laughed out loud. The Meow people were forthright, especially the men who loved wine. Upon seeing that this monkey also had a common interest, they felt that their Meow people's strong wine was still the best in the world. If you don't believe, look, even the monkey could not help but drink a mouthful. For a moment, many of the Meow people actually became happy. Many of them threw bananas and fruits toward Xiao Hui. Obviously, they liked Xiao Hui and wanted to get it to eat. Xiao Hui was shocked at the start. Suddenly, the sky changed color. Numerous strange objects smashed down. It was simply unavoidable. It could not help but became enraged, ZZ, and made ferocious gestures towards the Meow people. Unexpectedly, after a while, it saw that they were all fragrant fruits. How could it not be happy? It immediately picked up a few bananas from the ground, and then slowly jogged back to Ghostly, sat down on the ground, and peeled the bananas to eat. And that wine bag in its hand was still in its hand and was brought back. Ghostly looked at Xiao Hui, saw Xiao Hui eating with relish, occasionally poking its head out, placed that wine bag beside its mouth and drank a mouthful. The monkey drank a few mouthfuls of the strong wine, but its face did not seem to turn red. Its alcohol tolerance was not small. Ghostly was about to say something, but when he turned his head and saw Xiao Bai leaning on his shoulder in a drunken state, he suddenly sighed and retracted his words, did not say anything. Instead, it was Xiao Hui who was grinning, seeing Ghostly glancing at it from time to time. It stretched out its monkey hand and picked up a banana from the ground and passed it to Ghostly. Seemed like it was quite loyal and wanted to share the good fortune with Ghostly. Ghostly was silent, his expression fluctuating. Finally, he slowly shook his head, turned around, and did not look at the monkey anymore. Xiao Hui shrugged its shoulders, did not know why its master was not interested in such delicacies. Anyway, it was eating happily and did not care about him. It looked around, scurried out, and picked up a few more bananas, placed them on the ground in front of it, and slowly tasted. This messy scene was what the Miao tribe leader Tu Ma Gu saw when he just came out from the altar. The soldiers responsible for guarding the altar were all drunk, lying on the ground in disorder. The air was filled with the strong fragrance of the strong wine. The Miao people watching from afar, from time to time, there were people laughing out loud. As for those two Central Plains people, the man was still all right, standing in his spot, but his expression was rather ugly. The woman seemed to be drunk too, her face bright red and beautiful, leaning on the man, but she was still able to stand. On this point, she was much better than the Miao soldiers lying all over the ground. Even that strange three-eyed monkey that they brought along was sitting at their feet, eating a mouthful of fruit and a mouthful of strong wine in high spirits. Tu Ma Gu was not an idiot. After a few more glances and the wine bags on the ground and the Miao people's expressions, he knew that it was not the two Central Plains people who were up to no good, but his own men who did not live up to expectations. When he saw the tribe leader walking down, someone ran up and whispered in his ear, briefly explaining the matter. Looking at the drunkards on the ground, Tu Ma Gu was fuming with anger, thinking that these good-for-nothings actually threw the important matter of guarding the altar to the back of their minds. What was even more abominable was a dozen over 20 men actually got drunk with a weak girl. If this matter was spread out, the Miao tribe's reputation would inevitably hit rock bottom and would be secretly mocked to death by the other 4 tribes of the southern border. After making up his mind, he would definitely deal with these good-for-nothings Miao people. Tu Ma Gu forced a smile on his face, pretended to turn a blind eye to the mess on the ground, and walked over to Ghostly. Ghostly at this moment also saw Tu Ma Gu walking over. His heart thumped. Although this drinking competition was not done openly, but with the Miao people lying on the ground drunk, anyone could tell that the Miao people had lost a great deal of face. When Tu Ma Gu came down from the mountain, Ghostly saw from afar that his expression was not right. Obviously, he was very angry. Although right now, he forced a smile and walked over, but how would Ghostly not know his displeasure? Couldn't help but blame Xiao Bai in his heart for creating such a big trouble. When Tu Ma Gu came closer, Ghostly forced a smile, embarrassedly said, "Elder, this friend of mine, she really does not know the rules, and that's why she created such a..." Tu Ma Gu shook his head, said to him, "You don't need to say, I already know, it's all because my men are really useless." Ghostly was silent, and then cautiously said, "Then is the great shaman willing to meet us?" Tu Ma Gu glanced at him, and then looked at Xiao Bai, who was leaning on Ghostly, her eyes half closed. Lightly panting, with a bitter laugh, said, "All of you go up. The great shaman has agreed to meet all of you." Ghostly was overjoyed, hurriedly said, "Many thanks, Elder." Tu Ma Gu indifferently said, "I am the Miao tribe leader here. You can call me Tu Ma Gu." Ghostly was surprised, although he could tell that this elder had a high prestige among the Miao people, but he did not expect him to be the Miao tribe leader. Immediately nodded and said, "As such, many thanks, tribe leader." Tu Ma Gu shook his head and said, "All of you quickly go up. The great shaman is still waiting for all of you." Ghostly acknowledged and was about to stride towards the altar halfway up the mountain, but was held back by Xiao Bai. That soft as if boneless body was leaning on him. If he walked away like that, she would fall on the ground. Immediately, he quietly said to Xiao Bai, I am going to meet the great shaman. Stand properly by yourself and wait for me here, all right? Xiaobai did not know if she could hear him clearly in her drunkenness, but hearing Ghost Li's voice beside her ears, she did not open her eyes. Her face smiled gently. Extremely charming, but she did not speak. Only the hand that was grabbing Ghost Li's clothes tightened. Ghost Li was helpless. This was after all an unfamiliar place, and Xiaobai was that drunk, leaving a lady like her here alone. Inevitably, he felt uneasy. The thought flashed in his mind. He could not help but sigh, stretched out his arms to support Xiaobai, and together they walked up the mountain. Ma Gu led the way in front. Ghost Li supported Xiaobai as they walked. Xiaobai's body was still limp, and when she walked, she was as light as a feather. Most of her weight was leaning on Ghost Li's hands. Ghost Li frowned, an indescribable feeling in his heart. Suddenly, he thought of something and turned his head to look. As expected, Xiao Hui was still not moving, sitting at the same spot eating fruits and drinking strong wine, occasionally making laughter, indulging in pleasure. Ghost Li's leg kicked a banana up and just happened to hit Xiao Hui's head, giving it a fright. Its monkey head abruptly turned over, using its hand to feel the place where it was hit. Ghost Li, in a bad mood, said, "Let's go." Speaking, he again carrying Xiaobai. He followed Ma Gu up the mountain to the altar. Chapter 237. Xiao Hui scratched its head, stood up, and threw down the fruits in its hands. Actually, it was almost finished, at the same time shook that wine bag. That soldier had a high alcohol tolerance and had already drunk a lot. In addition, the wine bag dropped on the ground. A lot of wine also flowed out. After being drunk by the monkey for a while, it had already bottomed out. Xiao Hui threw the wine bag on the ground and was about to follow Ghost Li. Suddenly, its body paused and gave a drunken burp. Its monkey face also slowly turned red. Seemed like the Miao people's strong liquor was after all extraordinary. Right now, it was also slowly getting to its head. But Xiao Hui was after all a spiritual creature. Although its face was turning red, but it still moved as usual. Hurriedly ran over to catch up with Ghost Li. Just that when they were walking up the mountain path, the Miao soldiers who were standing guard just now were all drunk. The ground was littered with the drunkards' wine bags. Ghost Li supported Xiaobai and walked over first. Xiao Hui walked and suddenly stopped, picked up another big wine bag from the ground and shook it. A gurgling sound was heard. It seemed like there was still quite a lot left. The monkey face couldn't help but became delighted. With this pleasant surprise, Xiao Hui immediately became happy, picked up a wine bag here and shook it twice, picked up a wine bag from the west and shook it twice. While walking, it picked it up, but helplessly it only had 2 monkey hands. After picking up one, it dropped the other. Unfortunately, Xiao Hui was greedy and unwilling to give it up. It picked up a total of 7 or 8 wine bags and placed them together, but was unable to bring them along. It could only anxiously make zizzy sounds. It was about to raise its head to seek help from its master, but unexpectedly it was shocked. Its master and that Miao old man had already walked far away, almost reaching the altar on the mountain. Xiao Hui, easy, cried out, jumping here and there, scratching its ears and cheeks, anxious like an ant on a hot pan. In the end, it finally hardened its heart, grabbed the 2 wine bags, dragged it with both hands on the ground, and ran up the mountain with all its might. Luckily, the wine bags made by the Miao people were thick and sturdy. If it dragged it here and there, it would have been torn long ago. Looking at the monkey's interesting look, the Miao people spectating at the foot of the mountain, roars of laughter were heard from afar, reverberating in the 7-mile cave valley. Xiao Hui hurried all the way and finally caught up with Ghost Li and the rest in front of the altar, panting heavily. Ghost Li turned and glanced at it, saw the monkey's tongue hanging out, panting heavily, but its hands were still tightly holding onto the 2 wine bags, stunned for a moment. After a moment, he shook his head and turned away. Ma Gu gestured towards the altar, said, "All of you follow me." Ghost Li nodded, said, "Many thanks." Ma Gu smiled, took the lead, and walked into the Miao altar. Ghost Li followed behind him and also walked in. As soon as they entered the altar, a gloomy feeling enveloped them. It was completely different from a sunny world outside. Not knowing if it was the great shaman's instructions, along the way, Tu-Ma-Gu and Ghostly did not see anyone else in the altar. Xiao Bai was drunk. Ghostly was preoccupied and did not notice the surroundings. Only Xiao Hui dragging the two big wine bags follow behind them, burping after a while, its monkey eyes looking around curiously. In the dark altar, on the stone walls, there was a faint red color that seemed to be smeared with blood. And at the corners of the stone walls, there were often ferocious beast skulls, sinister decorations. Xiao Hui called out twice, seemed uneasy. It quickened its steps and followed closely behind Ghostly, but the wine bags in its hand were still clutched tightly. There were no obstructions along the way. They soon reached the deepest part of the altar, outside the great shaman's stone chamber. Ghostly suddenly frowned. Although he was feeling nervous, but subconsciously, the cold energy emitted from the sinister orb in his body suddenly stirred. In this stone chamber, there seemed to be a mysterious, unfathomable power, stimulating the sinister orb. Tu-Ma-Gu turned his head and spoke to Ghostly. "It's here. The great shaman is inside. Let's go in." Ghostly nodded, followed Tu-Ma-Gu into the stone chamber. At one glance, he saw that hunched figure with his back facing them, sitting in front of the fire. Tu-Ma-Gu indicated for them to wait, and then walked up himself, stopped at the previous spot, respectfully said, "Great shaman, they are here." The great shaman's aged voice unhurriedly sounded in Ghostly's ears. It was actually a very fluent and authentic Central Plains language. Said, "Invite them over. Tu-Ma-Gu, there is nothing left for you here. You can go." Tu-Ma-Gu acknowledged, turned his head, and spoke to Ghostly. "Then all of you talk to the great shaman. I will go out first." Ghostly nodded to him, sincerely said, "Tribe leader, I am really grateful to you." Tu-Ma-Gu smiled and said, "It's nothing." While speaking, he looked at Xiao Bai in Ghostly's arms. Thinking that there was actually a girl with such a high alcohol tolerance in this world, it was really inconceivable. While thinking, he slowly walked out. After Tu-Ma-Gu's figure disappeared, Ghostly turned and looked ahead. That hunched figure flickered incessantly in the firelight, dimly illuminated, indistinctly unreal, filled with mystery. He was hesitating on how to open his mouth to plead. The great shaman's voice was already heard. "Young man, come over." Ghostly heard this aged voice, suddenly felt a sense of respect, immediately replied, "Yes." Supporting Xiao Bai, he slowly walked over, 6 chi behind the great shaman, hesitated for a moment and did not continue forward, stood where he was. Xiao Hui dragged the two big wine bags and followed closely beside Ghostly's feet. Its 3 eyes kept glancing left and right, assessing the surroundings, and finally its eyes landed on that strange divine dog statue, staring at it incessantly. "Sit," the great shaman's aged voice quietly said. Ghostly obeyed and sat down. Xiao Bai by now could not stand stably and seemed to be affected by the alcohol. Looked like she was about to fall asleep. Subconsciously, she leaned on Ghostly, rubbed her head on his shoulder twice, and fell into a deep sleep. As for Xiao Hui, it seemed to be affected by the quiet atmosphere in the stone chamber, did not even dare to breathe loudly, and quietly sat down beside Xiao Bai, placed the 2 wine bags by its side, quietly picked one up, and placed it to its mouth, drank a mouthful. Its monkey eyes turned, looked at the great shaman's figure. "You all are looking for me. For what matter?" The great shaman was still facing the fire, did not turn his head. Ghostly said, "Great shaman, it is because I have a friend. She lost 2 souls and 7 spirits. Only 1 remnant soul remains. Now it has been a whole 10 years, like a fake dead person. I heard, great shaman, you have the soul return strange art. Just nice to be able to save her. Great shaman, you must save her." Speaking till the end, his voice also seemed to tremble. 10 years of sorrowful waiting, bitter search, seemed to surge up his heart at this moment. The great shaman did not speak, remained silent. The stone chamber descended into silence. Only that fire in front of the great shaman crackled and burned, flickering. After a long time, the great shaman then broke the silence, said, "That friend of yours, how did she get this illness?" Ghostly hesitated for a moment, slowly said, 10 years ago, I fought with. The enemy, the other party's skills were unfathomable. Using a powerful celestial sword to slash down, I was powerless to resist. She did not care about her own life, burned her whole body's blood, fusing into the 3 souls and 7 spirits. Only then did she save me, but she herself also became. His voice sounded choked, paused for a while, and then continued. But luckily she still had a rare treasure with her, Huan Bell. At the critical moment, one of her souls was captured and sucked into the bell. Only then there was a chance of survival. Great Shaman, I beg you to save her. The great shaman's figure in the firelight suddenly seemed to age again. Slowly said, That friend you mentioned just now, is she from the evil sect? Ghostly was shocked. He was afraid that the evil sect's reputation would be bad, so he did not dare to elaborate. Unexpectedly, the great shaman, after hearing it, suddenly said it out directly. While he was still bewildered, the great shaman's aged voice had already said again, She must be a woman. And that incantation she used was the evil sect's secret infatuation incantation. Isn't it right? Ghostly was shocked, surprised, and delighted. Surprised that this elder in the depths of the southern border's dark altar was actually a reclusive person. Delighted because the more capable he was, the greater the hope of saving Bai Yao. Without caring about anything else, he nodded repeatedly and said, Great Shaman is really discerning. It is indeed so. But although there are many slander against the evil sect in the world, but this friend of mine is really extremely kind-hearted. I beg Great Shaman you to use your miraculous hand to bring back the spring. Save her this once. The great shaman's shoulder seemed to move slightly. In the sound of the burning fire, there seemed to be a slight sigh. That voice was faintly sorrowful, indistinctly had a hint of sadness. Your Central Plains good sect and evil sect, to me this barbarian, there's no difference. You don't have to worry about this. Ghostly was overjoyed, was about to say something, but the great shaman had already continued. That soul return strange art that you mentioned, I indeed know a thing or two. But whether it can save that friend of yours, I have no confidence. Ghost Lee's heart trembled. His eyes heated. These 10 years, today, finally in the layers of darkness, saw a faint hope. Just that the great shaman's voice continued. But before this, I still have a question. You have to answer me first. Ghostly nodded his head repeatedly, said, Great Shaman, please speak. The great shaman unhurriedly said, Who was it that told you? The great shaman in the Miao altar inherited this soul, returned strange art. Ghostly was startled, subconsciously turned to look at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai, without knowing since when, had already slid down from his shoulder, resting her head on Ghost Lee's thighs, a smile on her lips, sleeping soundly. Ghostly was so engrossed in his conversation with the great shaman that he did not notice her. And at this moment, looking further away, the monkey Xiao Hui's face was also flushed red. The remaining 2 bags of strong wine seemed to have been gulped down by it. Right now it was leaning on Xiao Bai, its monkey head resting on Xiao Bai's stomach, its 4 limbs spread out, sprawled out on the ground, its stomach bulging, sleeping soundly. Ghostly turned his head, facing the great shaman's back. For a moment he did not know what to say, shook his head with a bitter smile. Chapter 238. Southern Border, 7 Mile Cave. Miao Altar. Deep in the dim and silent hall, Ghost Lee and the great shaman who were still conscious did not speak. Only the crackling sounds of the burning fire could be heard from time to time. Other than that, in the quiet altar there was a strange sound. The monkey Xiao Hui was drunk, sleeping soundly, and was snoring. Ghostly often spent time with Xiao Hui, but he did not notice Xiao Hui snoring in his sleep. It seemed like the Miao liquor was really extraordinary. The monkey's face was bright red, his stomach bulging up and down, moving up and down. Other than cute, it looked a little comical. But they were both drunk. Xiao Bai looked much better than Xiao Hui. This 9-tailed celestial fox who had trained for 1,000 years naturally was more skilled than Xiao Hui. After this bout of drunkenness, her skin was rosy, her head leaning. Between her brows there was a kind of seductive charm. She was really an evil creature that could turn all living things upside down. Ghostly sighed in his heart, turned his head. The great shaman was still facing the fire. Did not turn, but right now he slowly said, This friend of yours, seems to not be an ordinary person. Ghostly was shocked, secretly thought that this great shaman was mysterious and unfathomable. Could it be that he had seen through Xiao Bai's identity as a nine-tailed celestial fox? Although the southern border five tribes' customs were different from the Central Plains, far closer to living animals than the Central Plains people, but this kind of evil charm, how would they view it? Ghostly was not sure. He pondered for a moment, deliberated over his words, unhurriedly said, Why? Why would the great shaman see a girl like her in a different light? The great shaman was silent for a moment, indifferently said, Someone like her, a weak girl, but with her alcohol capacity, defeated several of our Miao strong men. Don't tell me she is still an ordinary person? Ghostly was stunned and then relaxed. Just so when he recalled the spectacular scene of Xiao by drinking with the Miao people at the foot of the mountain, he could not help but secretly shook his head. Maybe being imprisoned in the dark inferno altar, spending 300 years of loneliness and pain, she also needed to indulge and vent. Ghostly gently turned his head. Xiao Bai was still quietly leaning on his leg, sleeping peacefully. Gentle breathing, lightly closed lips and lightly closed eyes, long and delicate eyelashes occasionally trembling, like a child sleeping with something on her mind. Maybe she was dreaming of something? Just that. Right now, could she still sleep peacefully? Would there be nightmares, make her suffer in her dreams? Xiao Bai's delicate brows frowned slightly, as if she felt the gaze but also seemed to be dreaming of something. She turned her head slightly and then fell into a deep sleep again. Under the light of the fire, her face lost some of its charm. Instead, it seemed to have some innocence that he had never seen before. Ghostly looked away, looked at the great shaman, said, She has drunk too much. I'm afraid she can't answer your question now. Great shaman. The great shaman was clearly not surprised, did not even turn back to look at the lady. After a pause, he slowly said, There is one thing you may not know. Ghostly was surprised, said, What? Please say it. The hunched figure of the great shaman cast a shadow in front of the fire, swaying gently. Even his voice sounded erratic. This soul-return, unusual skill has always been passed down among the shamans of the Miao tribe altar. To put clearly, only the generations of great shamans have this kind of unusual skill. It has never been passed down to outsiders. Even our own tribe members do not know about it. But this young lady looks so young. How could she know about this? I really can't figure it out. Ghostly was surprised. Xiao Bai was an evil fox that had cultivated for thousands of years. Just that because of her high skills, she could transform into human form, and her looks were charming and beautiful. In terms of knowledge and experience, not many people in this world could compare to her. Just that these words naturally could not be said to this great shaman. Ghostly's thoughts turned, diverted the topic, said, Great shaman, you did not even turn your head, also did not look at her once. How do you know she is a young lady? The great shaman's head tilted slightly to the side, as if laughing quietly. Not knowing if he had seen through Ghostly's thoughts, said, Since this lady is already drunk, whatever it is, better to wait for her to sober up before talking. You are a guest from afar. After you go out, look for our Miao tribe leader, Tumagu. I will let someone pass the message to him. Let him arrange for you all to stay here for a few days. Ghostly frowned. With his wish, he really wished he could immediately talk to the great shaman and then save Bai Yao, but hearing his tone, although his voice was calm but unquestionable, clearly he had to ascertain Xiao Bai's background first before anything else. Right now, he had a favor to ask, and thinking that he had already waited for 10 years. So what if he had to wait another day? Ghostly inhaled deeply, nodded and said, All right. The great shaman quietly said, Then you can go out. Ghostly nodded to the great shaman's back, was about to stand up and walk out, but was stunned again. Xiao Bai was sleeping soundly on his thigh. She looked very drunk. How could he ask her to get up and walk? Ghostly managed to call out twice. Xiao Bai, as expected, turned a deaf ear and in a daze, seemed to be annoyed at being disturbed, pursed her lips, turned over, and went back to sleep. It did not matter if she turned over. Xiao Hui, who was originally leaning on her stomach, right now, with a plop its head hit the ground. But the monkey did not seem to feel anything and continued to snore loudly. Seemed like a natural spiritual being. Even a monkey's head was very hard, much stronger than an ordinary monkey's head. Ghostly sighed, shook his head incessantly. After hesitating for a moment, he could only bend down to support Xiao Bai, and then stood up, stretched out both hands to carry Xiao Bai. At the same time, he pulled Xiao Hui to his shoulder, carried this monkey and human fox, and walked out. Xiao Bai, who was lying in his arms, a faint fragrance, a faint smile, and that white with a tinge of pink on her face, gently swayed before his eyes. Ghostly inhaled deeply, strode out, and left the altar. Walking out of the dark altar, past the two huge stone pillars at the entrance, the sunlight immediately shone on his face. A gentle warmth rose from his body. Ghostly squinted his eyes slightly, saw Tu Magu, who was standing not far ahead with his hands clasped behind his back, surveying the 7-mile cave scenery from the mountain. A Miao person who looked like a shaman walked out from the altar behind Ghostly, passed by Ghostly, and walked to Tu Magu, spoke a few words to him in a low voice. Tu Magu turned his head, glanced at Ghostly, and then his eyes landed on Xiao Bai, who was in a drunken deep sleep, nodded his head, as if agreeing to something. That shaman expressionlessly turned around, without looking at Ghostly, walked straight back to the altar and disappeared into the shadows. Tu Magu smiled and walked over, said, "How is it? Did the great shaman agree?" Ghostly smiled and said, "Still don't know. He asked us to stay here." Tu Magu nodded and said, "I know. All of you follow me." After speaking, he turned and walked down the mountain. Ghostly carried Xiao Bai and Xiao Hui and followed behind him. Tu Magu was heard saying, "We are a poor and remote village here, not as prosperous as your central plains. Do as you wish." Hee. Ghostly saw that this Miao tribe leader was very easygoing, nodded and said, "Tribe leader, you are too polite. It is us who have disturbed you." Tu Magu laughed and did not say anything more. Coming down the mountain, Tu Magu pondered for a moment and then led Ghostly towards the riverside. Along the way, quite a number of Miao people were watching, but their gazes were obviously on Xiao Bai. They walked past that central plain-style stone bridge that Ghostly saw earlier and came to a relatively secluded house built beside a row of green trees. Ghostly stood behind Tu Magu, frowned slightly. This house was not big, only one floor and one room, square in shape, simple and unadorned, completely built with wood, and on the walls of the house, there was no sign of the usual Miao people's houses hanging animal fur bones. Tu Magu turned around and said, "This house has been empty for a long time, but we have been cleaning it. It is still considered clean, and people seldom come here. Both of you will have to stay here for the night." Ghostly nodded slightly and said, "Many thanks, tribe leader." Tu Magu smiled and looked at Xiao Bai in Ghostly's arms, said, "Then I shall not disturb you all. Both of you can rest first." After speaking, he was about to leave, but stopped, as if he recalled something, said, "Later I will also send someone to send some food over. Both of you can rest assured and rest. Our customs here are simple and crude. Sorry for the inconveniences." Chapter 239. Ghostly shook his head repeatedly, said, "Not at all. Thank you, tribe leader." Tu Magu nodded, turned, and left. Ghostly watched him for a while, waited until he was far away, turned, and once again sized up the house. No matter how he looked, this house looked like a house built by a Central Plains person. He carried Xiao Bai and Xiao Hui, pushed open the door, and walked in. The furnishings in a room were very simple: a bed, a table, a few wooden chairs. The walls were made of neatly sized paulownia wood. One side of the window was opened. The entire room had a faint aroma of trees. Ghostly had never been one who placed importance on luxurious accommodations. Such simplicity instead suited him. He walked over and first placed Xiao Bai on the bed. Xiao Bai quietly muttered a few times and then fell into a deep sleep. Ghostly shook his head, carried Xiao Hui down from his shoulder. The monkey's mouth opened and closed, occasionally making clicking sounds. Looking at its satisfied look, Ghostly sighed and placed it on the bed as well. Looking at the man and monkey sleeping peacefully, Ghostly turned around, walked to the table, and sat down. The room seemed to have suddenly quieted down. Other than their breathing, there was no other sound. In this strange house in a foreign land, he sat alone, quietly. Outside the window, the sun shone brightly. 10 miles to the east of the 7-mile cave, which was surrounded by mountains, a stretch of undulating high mountains. On one of the mountain peaks, two people stood, gazing at the fertile land in the distance. That is the 7-mile cave. The person standing in front quietly said, in his words, there was deep emotion, anger, and longing. Under the sunlight, this was an extremely strong and tall man, his upper body naked, pants made from ferocious beast skin. His skin, because of the long years of sun and wind exposure, revealed a strong bronze color. On that muscular body, there was a bare head tattoo on his chest. Other than that, huge crisscrossing scars could be seen all over his body. It was not difficult to imagine how many terrifying beasts he had fought. Yes, Chief. The one who answered him was a man standing a step behind him. That is 7-Mile Cave. His attire was similar to that of the man in front of him, but other than the beast skin pants, he was also wearing clothes made of fur. Looking at him, he was much smaller than the man in front of him. Right now, there seemed to be a faint smile on his lips. Looking ahead, slowly said, "Over there is the Miao tribe's base that has ruled the southern border for 200 years. At the same time, our tribe's divine weapon, Jade Bone, was in the Miao's altar in the middle of 7-Mile Caves Mountain. Under that Miao's evil god ferocious dog statue, it had been suppressed for 200 years. Giggle. An ear-piercing voice suddenly rang out from the burly man in front. The person behind him looked over and saw that it was the person he called the Li clan patriarch. He clenched his fists tightly, his knuckles cracking from the immense force. 200 years. It's been 200 years. The strong man's voice wasn't loud, but it sounded like he was roaring to himself. Yeah, 200 years. 200 years ago, we were ambushed by the despicable Miao people. Their evil great shaman used a vicious evil spell to curse our warriors to death, snatched away the sacred jade bone that we worshipped, drove us to the most barren place in the southern border, lived the most miserable life for 200 years. The person behind, using cold words, faintly spoke of the irreconcilable hatred. The strong mountain breeze blew on the Li clan patriarch's mountain-like body, like knives, but he had no reaction. Right now in his eyes, there was only that stretch of hot land surrounded by mountains. Losing the jade bone is the greatest insult and disrespect to the bear deity. The person behind was still speaking, so for these 200 years, the bear deity was enraged and refused to take care of our Li clan. Until today, as long as we defeat the Miao people, take back the jade bone, the bear deity will definitely look after our Li clan again. Then we will be able to occupy the best land in the southern border. Let our clansmen and descendants live here for generations to come." His voice suddenly rose, said, "Clan leader, we absolutely cannot let our future children, like us, fight with firewolves, black tigers, these strange beasts that even the strongest warriors are unable to resist, and just to snatch some food. We want to live on. We want the best land." He said fiercely. In front, that giant-like clan leader did not turn back, but his angry and heavy panting had already revealed his feelings. After a moment of silence, he turned his head and said, "The other 3 tribes, are there really no problems?" The person behind immediately nodded and said, "Yes, clan leader, the Miao people have always been tyrannical in the southern border. The other 3 tribes have long disliked them. The Zhuang people are numerous and powerful, but instead have to submit to the Miao people. They have long felt indignant. The 2 tribes has always been isolated and had always maintained a distance from the other 4 tribes, unwilling to get involved in other tribes' disputes. The last Gaoshan tribe is weak in numbers and can only protect themselves, unable to expand." An ambiguous expression appeared on his face. Quietly said, "Clan leader, as long as we defeat the Miao tribe in one move, with our Li tribe warriors' bravery from fighting the most ferocious beasts in the southern border for these 200 years, in addition to the great bear deity's blessings, the day we dominate the southern border is just around the corner." In the Li tribe leader's eyes, a fervent gaze immediately shot out. Even looking at the 7-Mile Cave ahead, his entire body seemed to tremble slightly. That was excitement and thirst. maybe also the warrior's innate bloodthirsty instinct. But he was, after all, the clan leader, not a reckless man who did not consider. After the initial excitement, he quieted down and then turned and stared intently at the man behind him, said, Ahitai, legend has it that evil Miao great shaman has already lived for 300 years and is still in the deepest part of the Miao altar. His evil skills are the most terrifying power in the southern border. Can you really handle him? The man called Ahitai, a mysterious smile appeared on his face, said, Clan leader, I have already displayed before you the divine skills that the beast deity in the 10,000 great mountains imparted to me, in addition to the magical treasures that he gave me. It's fine if the great shaman is dead. If not, even if he is alive, I will definitely be able to defeat him. The Li tribe leader looked at him for a long while, nodded his head heavily. In fact, the great shaman's shadow had always been a dark cloud over the heads of the various tribes in the southern border. To the Li tribe, it was a nightmare that they could not get rid of. But this clansman called Ahitai, who had disappeared since young, after returning from the 10,000 great mountains mysteriously, suddenly displayed inconceivable powers. This power was actually so strong that it finally made the entire Li tribe once again stirred up the hatred buried deep in their hearts. In order to live on, in order to live better, the Li tribe leader clenched his teeth fiercely on his tall and strong body. The huge bear head tattoo looked even more ferocious and terrifying. 200 years of enmity, we will avenge tonight. From the gaps of his teeth, these few words were squeezed out. The sunlight shone on him, and Ahitai warmly shone on the mountain range. Behind the two of them, on the hillside facing away from the sun, numerously tribe warriors appeared, their expressions solemn and stern. Every one of them was so strong and healthy. And on their crisscrossed chests, that ferocious bear head tattoo seemed to be roaring in the wind. 7 Mile Cave, a secluded small house. Ghostly sat beside the table in the room, quietly and without a word. Time here seemed to suddenly slow down, silent and torturous. In this silent time, what would you think of? Maybe it was the past years, the time when he was young, like a sigh reverberating in the distant years, gently rising and then quietly falling. Finally, not a trace was left. His expression was indifferent, his brows slightly frowning. The scenery outside the window was like a painting. Quiet, quiet, until suddenly a sound startled him out of his contemplation. Dong, dong, dong. A series of light knocking sounds suddenly rang in the house. Ghostly turned back, looked towards the door. Chapter 240. Dong, dong, dong. There was another knock on the door, but there was no sound of anyone talking outside. Ghostly frowned, walked over, and opened the door. A person stood at the door. It was a 13 or 14-year-old Miao youth. His face still looked childish. In his hand was a basket. In the middle were some meat, wine, and dishes. It seemed like two Magu tribe leader had sent someone to deliver the food. That youth passed the basket over. Ghostly nodded and said, "Thank you very much." That youth grinned, but only made a sound. Ghostly was surprised. This youth was actually a mute who could not speak. No wonder he only knocked and did not speak. He could not help but assess the youth a few more times. The youth's clothes were mostly patched up. Evidently, he had worn it for a long time, very different from the Miao people he saw on the streets of 7 Mile Cave. Most likely, this youth's position here was not high. Most likely, he was an orphan. Once Ghostly thought of the word orphan, he was stunned for a moment, but in that short moment, that youth, after smiling at him, turned and left. Looking at his back figure, he did not look sad or depressed. Instead, he looked rather happy. Ghostly watched that youth's figure gradually disappearing, suddenly felt an inexplicable vexation in his heart, sighed softly, turned and entered the house, a sound of the door closing. The sun gradually set in the west. The sky gradually darkened. In the numerous Miao houses in 7 Mile Cave, lights were lit up one by one. The faint yellow lights that seeped out from the windows flickered incessantly in the darkness, wavering like silent eyes in the night. Then each family, the people under each light, all had their own mood in life. Ghostly stood at the window, gazed at the Miao people's dwelling, did not speak. The night breeze gradually blew. The Meow people's excited laughter could be heard from far away in 7 Mile Cave. Dogs barking from somewhere, just that these sounds carried along with the wind, instead highlighted the tranquility of this piece of land. Maybe these ordinary Meow people, they were instead happier than those cultivators. Ghostly slowly closed the window, turned around, and isolated himself from the outside world. He was stunned when he turned. Xiaobai, who was still sleeping quietly a moment ago, sat up, leaning against the wall beside the bed, quietly watching him. Ghostly glanced at her, said, "You are awake?" Xiaobai smiled, gently rubbed her forehead, said, "Is there tea? Pour me a cup. My head is still aching." Ghostly walked to the table, poured a cup of water, and passed it to her, said, "Meow people, where would there be tea? You drink some water." Xiaobai nodded, took the cup, drank a few mouthfuls. Her spirit seemed to be shaken, heaved a long sigh, and then glanced at Ghostly, said, "Are you blaming me in your heart?" Ghostly bitterly laughed, shook his head, said, "Without you, I would not know the Meow people's great shaman can save Bai Yao. Never mind. Tomorrow we will go and see him." Xiaobai nodded, said, "I am not very clear-headed after being drunk. Have you seen the Meow people's great shaman?" Ghostly nodded and said, "I have seen him." He also admitted that he indeed knows the soul return unusual skill, just that he must ask about your background, must ascertain how you know this secret before he agreed. While speaking, he could not help but felt worried whether the nine-tailed celestial fox's identity would be willing to be revealed. He was unsure of Xiaobai's reaction. Xiaobai was silent for a moment, indifferently said, "Tomorrow after daybreak, I will go with you to see him." Ghostly nodded, was about to speak when Xiaobai suddenly laughed, said, "Look at this monkey. He is even more drunk than me." Ghostly glanced at Xiao Hui, who was still lying beside Xiaobai, snoring loudly with its forelimbs spread out, shook his head and did not speak. Xiaobai stretched out her hand, patted Xiao Hui's head. Her eyes unexpectedly landed on the third eye in the middle of Xiao Hui's forehead. After a moment of hesitation, raised her head and spoke to Ghostly. "There is one matter. I have been thinking for a long time. It is Xiao Hui's third spiritual." Before she finished, suddenly outside their house, above the 7 Mile Cave, a deafening howl like a dog's bark exploded. The sound shook the surroundings, as if the entire mountain range was shaking. Even the two of them, with their level of cultivation, felt their ears ringing. Both of them were shocked. Ghostly quickly walked to the door, pulled it open, and walked out. The deafening sound reverberated in the 7 Mile Cave Valley, echoes incessantly from far and near. Right now, all the Meow people in the 7 Mile Cave were shocked by the deafening sound. The original tranquility was instantly broken. Ghostly only saw numerous Meow people rushing out of their houses, gazing afar. Their faces were filled with terror. Many of them kept shouting the same sentence, but he did not understand what it meant. Footsteps sounded behind him. Xiaobai also walked out, stood beside him, looked at the panicking Meow people far away, listened to the incessant shouts of the Meow people, gradually frowned, quietly said, "Something might have happened." Ghostly could also tell something was wrong, said, "What is it? What are those Meow people saying?" Xiaobai's face was solemn, said, "That deafening sound just now, it was the warning from the dog deity stone that the Meow people worshipped. Unless it was a critical moment of extinction, this dog deity would never make such a sound. As far as I know, in the past 1,000 years, the Meow dog deity had only made one warning." Ghostly felt a wave of irritation. Right now, Bai Yao's life and death were all pinned on that mysterious great shaman in the Meow altar, yet this strange thing happened. Just when he was about to say something and ask Xiao Bai for clarification, the quiet night sky of the 7 Mile Cave started to change tremendously. In the night sky that was twinkling with starlight, thick dark clouds suddenly started to gather, covering the stars in the sky one by one. Those layers of dark clouds swarmed in from all directions. The wind and clouds changed, extremely strange. The insignificant people standing on the ground could not help but cried out in fear. Countless of them started to run around, following which more of them started to kneel and worship towards that Meow altar. Under the heavy dark clouds, This piece of land that was originally filled with joy turned into desolation. Ghostly frowned, quietly said, "There are cultivators coming." Xiaobai beside him looked at the sky, said, "Where are they from? Do you know?" Ghostly slowly shook his head, said, "From this skill of manipulating wind and clouds. It is very strange. Not like Central Plains good faction skills, also very different from the evil sect." Xiaobai's lips moved. A strange expression flashed past her face, as if she thought of something, but for some reason, she did not say it out. Right now, as the dark clouds got lower and lower, the Meow people in the 7-mile cave seemed to find it more and more difficult to even breathe. Everyone was shocked. The chaos became even more obvious. In this chaotic moment, a figure suddenly jumped out from the Meow people. Ghostly looked from afar. It was the Meow tribe leader, Tu Magu. Tu Magu shouted loudly at the Meow people, waving his arms with force. Gradually, the Meow people calmed down slightly. Under Tu Magu's command, the women and children started to run towards a distant mountain peak, leaving behind only the able-bodied men, many of them holding weapons. Clearly, the Meow people also knew that the situation was dire, prepared to fight to the death. In the chaos, Tu Magu glanced toward the riverbank, saw Ghostly both standing outside the door. He was stunned for a moment, and then nodded his head to signal, again focused his attention on commanding his people. The dark clouds gradually lowered, illuminating Xiaobai's face with uncertainty. Suddenly, she quietly spoke to Ghostly, "With this unfathomable cultivator around, I'm afraid the Meow people are not his match. Do you want to help them?" Ghostly was silent for a moment, nodded and said, "Since Bai Yao wants to rely on them." Before he could finish, suddenly a strange, deafening sound was heard from the dark clouds in the sky. Like a sudden clap of thunder, like a beast's roar, instantly the dark clouds seemed to be burning, glaring brilliantly inside and outside the clouds. Blazing golden light was everywhere. The next moment, in the rumbling sound from deep within the clouds, a huge fireball descended from the sky, carrying raging flames, but in the most central area, there seemed to be a strange black flame burning. Before it reached the ground, the surrounding trees were all scorched. The Meow people were shocked and exclaimed, but the speed of the fireball was extremely fast. Before the Meow people could run away, a sharp sound was heard piercing through the air. Rumble, rumble, rumble rushed over and crashed onto the ground. In the deafening sound, innumerable broken limbs flew out along with the burning flames. A tragic sight. Wails were heard everywhere. Ghostly's countenance changed. He did not expect the person in the dark clouds to attack without warning. He was about to fly up to help the Meow people when he felt his clothes on his back tighten. It was Xiaobai who was pulling him back. Ghostly felt puzzled and looked at her. Xiaobai glanced far away and said, "Don't be anxious. Look over there." Ghostly followed her gaze and saw that Xiaobai was looking at the Meow altar halfway up the mountain. On the platform at the top of the hill, illuminated by the raging flames, a withered and hunched figure stood majestically, looking up at the sky. Although the distance was too far and he could not see that person clearly, but from that figure, Ghostly immediately recognized that was the mysterious great shaman in the Meow altar. Chapter 241. He stopped, gazed at that old figure in the mountains. The fire clouds in the sky burned more and more fiercely, dyeing the entire night sky red, like the end of the world, the destruction of heaven and earth. In this southern border, it was playing out. A deafening sound. The night wind blazed. Suddenly a cry of alarm. Behind the Meow warriors, battle cries were heard. The Meow people turned pale. Tu Magu's expression changed greatly. 7-Mile Cave was easy to defend, but difficult to attack. There was only one mountain path leading out of the mountain. The Meow people had always been heavily guarded. Right now, someone had actually attacked without anyone noticing. Could it be tonight was really the day the Meow tribe would be exterminated? Just that the Meow tribe had dominated the southern border for 200 years. Tu Magu, as the tribe leader, in his panic, could still maintain his composure. With a loud shout, he was the first to charge behind. The Meow warriors one after another followed. The night was like blood, innumerable cold glints of weapons. In that instant, all lit up, streaked across the sky, splashing bright red blood. The fire blazed, the heaven and earth splitting, that group of demon-like warriors, with savage bear head tattoos on their chests, roaring, madly dashed out from the darkness. Their eyes were filled with fanaticism, filled with bloodlust. The one at the front, a tall figure, his naked upper body riddled with scars, wielding a huge stone axe, killing left and right. Wherever he passed, blood flowed everywhere. Wails were heard. The Meow warriors were famed for their bravery, but firstly, tonight's incident was sudden and the dog deity's barking. It was a once-in-a-thousand-years omen. The Meow people were shaken and terrified. Secondly, the Lee tribe had been lying in ambush for a long time and suddenly attacked. In addition to the 200 years of bravery forged in the southern border savage lands and the fact that if they did not succeed, the Meow warriors who dominated the southern border could not withstand it and started to retreat. Tumagu's eyes looked like it was about to spit fire. Right now he had seen the enemy clearly, roared, "Lee tribe." That Lee tribe leader raised his axe and chopped another Meow warrior to death. He looked over with a hideous smile. "Meow dogs, 200 years of enmity. Today all of you will repay it all." His voice had just landed. As if in response to his words, the Lee tribe warriors howled in unison, like wild beasts howling at the moon, carrying endless madness. One after another attacked. The Meow people, even more, could not withstand it and looked like they were about to collapse. At this critical juncture, suddenly in this valley, a deep and mysterious voice sounded, like a whisper, like the netherworld, reverberated in every inch of the 7-mile cave. The Meow warriors instantly beamed with joy, their spirits greatly boosted. On the other hand, at the Lee tribe side, from the tribe leader down, everyone's faces suddenly revealed panic. The great shaman, whose name shook the entire southern border, finally appeared at the Meow tribe's most critical moment. The red light flickered for a moment in the raging flames and then swiftly expanded, with the great shaman standing on the platform in the middle of the mountain as the center. It spread towards the entire 7-mile cave. Everywhere it passed, the burning flames were extinguished. The next moment, the red light had already extended to the battlefield where the Meow and Lee tribe were fighting from the back. The Meow people were unscathed under the red light, but at the end of the red light, a Lee tribe sturdy warrior touched this mysterious red light, suddenly cried out miserably, fell onto the ground, and convulsed incessantly. The next moment his entire body trembled. Blood flowed from the 7 apertures of his head and died. The Lee tribe people turned pale with fright and started to retreat. These warriors had always been used to killing any strong enemy or huge beast in front of them. If they were asked to attack, most likely they would not even blink. Just that this kind of mysterious shaman had always been the most dreaded power of the southern border tribes. For a moment, everyone's faces were filled with terror. Lee tribe leader's face also showed uncontrollable panic. The Meow people's great shaman name, to the other 4 tribes in the southern border, was simply a demonic existence. Right now, he deeply experienced this point. Just that he did not give the order to retreat, instead looked up at the sky. That patch of raging flames in the night sky, blazing and surging. Laughter was heard with a loud crash, carrying contempt and enmity. The sky, full of clouds, instantly brightened, the blazing flames, like suddenly transparent and blazing, transformed into a terrifying huge beast in the air. The wind aided the fire. The fire rose even higher. The wind and clouds changed constantly, like a surging sea roaring incessantly. In front of the clouds, a person suddenly appeared, like a deity, his entire body covered in flames, looking down from the sky, like a proud deity. He was seen waving his arms in the air, making a series of strange movements. The next moment, a mysterious power roared behind him. Immediately, the sky, full of flames, soared. The clouds moved crazily. A deafening explosion was heard. In that instant, innumerable fireballs fell from the sky, carrying raging flames, charged down to the mortal world. Everyone on the ground, including Ghostly and Xiao Bai, their countenances changed. Only one fireball fell, and the power was already so great. If these innumerable fireballs fell, most likely the 7-mile cave would immediately turn into a sea of fire, unable to hold on any longer. Even ordinary people could tell. The great shaman naturally also knew this. The red light in the valley lit up almost at the same time. Looking from afar, although his face could not be seen clearly, but that skinny figure under the shocking sky, full of flames, looked exceptionally old. Right now, everyone could see clearly that stretch of red light was emitted from the great shaman standing on the platform. More accurately, it was emitted from the wooden staff in his hand. That wooden staff was pitch black in color. When it stood up, it was even taller than the great shaman himself, especially the tip of the staff, embedded with a strange stone, not gold nor jade. Under the great shaman's mysterious power, it emitted an increasingly intense red light. The Li tribe suddenly stirred. Numerous warriors' eyes instantly turned red. The Li tribe leader, that giant, even gave a loud roar, as if carrying 200 years of unending hatred. Bone Jade, he looked up to the sky, loudly shouted, "Great bear deity, ah, 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 ah." That voice was mournful and ferocious. The voice shook the wilderness. Instantly, all of the Li tribe warriors howled together, rushed forward, that moment of blood splattering. It was the edge of life and death. The night was burning. The people were in a frenzy. The Miao warriors fought with their lives, but facing the crazed Li tribe warriors, they gradually lost the courage to fight, gradually retreated. That river in the 7-mile cave gradually turned red, reflecting the innumerable fireballs falling from the sky. The red light exploded, rose to the sky, facing those huge fireballs, forming a blood-colored screen, enveloping the sky above the 7-mile cave. Innumerable blazing fireballs, almost at the same time, hit the blood-red screen. Deafening explosions reverberated between the mountains, exploding into balls of huge red flames. The great shaman raised both his hands high above his head. That tall wooden staff pointed straight to the horizon, using all his strength to fight against that mysterious figure in the sky. Just as time passed, the pressure from the sky increased, almost to an inhuman level. The great shaman was shocked. In the Li tribe, for 1,000 years, there had never been such a strange skill, if not in that battle 200 years ago where the sacred weapon decided the fate of the two tribes. They would have used it long ago. But, placed in front of him, that mysterious figure in the sky, right now, was like an undefeatable god of war. Deep in the great shaman's heart, a haze grew. This strange skill was not something that existed in the world, but secretly circulated in the southern border for thousands of years. The legend of that mysterious evil demon. In the horizon, the flames blazed. Ahitai, who was standing in the clouds, his excited face reflected by the surrounding flames, could no longer conceal his complacency. Since young, he who was deeply shaken by the calamity of his tribe, abandoned everything and went deep into the 10,000 great mountains, found that evil demon and begged for his endless and powerful power. Today, he could finally save his tribe from the abyss of suffering. And the first step of the Li tribe's beautiful life was at this moment to trample the entire Miao tribe, take back the jade bone embedded in the Miao tribe, sacred weapon black staff, and offer it to the great bear deity. No, what was the bear deity when the Li tribe was suffering? Where was the bear deity? Ahitai bellowed in his heart, exerted his power. In an instant, another 10 enormous fireballs surged down from the clouds. When he watched with delight each time the fireballs and the red screen collided, causing that once undefeatable figure to tremble again and again, he had already decided in his heart, after the victory of the Li tribe, he would let all of his tribe convert to believe in that deity. Only the deity will be able to bring new life to the Li tribe. Note, Li tribe originated from the ancient Baiwe, long before the Qin and Han. A branch of Luo, you crossed the sea from the mainland to Hainan Island. The Sui dynasty called the Hainan Island inhabitants as Li Liao, the ancestors of the Li tribe. Today, they mainly live in the central south of Hainan Province Li tribe in Miao Autonomous Prefecture. The rest are scattered in Wanning, Tuanchang, Qionghai, Qingmai County, Ding'an, etc. with the Han people. Li was their pronunciation of mountain ridge. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.